My
Perfect.
entrance, I came from the school maker again.
All right, good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Upper Captiva Fire and Rescue District Board of Commissioners meeting. It's our first budget hearing. The time is 10 a.m. Present at the table, we have Commissioner Fry, Commissioner Hammond, myself, Commissioner Rosen, Commissioner Burns, and Commissioner Philipczak. We have Chief Cottrell here today, Assistant Chief Tom Tracy. We also have former board member AJ LaValle, Alex Murphy, L.A. Brinkner, Ellen Justice, David Bolmy, and Teresa Bolmy. So welcome everyone on Zoom. We have Ava Wolm, Jeff Fox, Carrie Williams, Lisa Walker, Sarah Hammond, and Tina Goodman. That was an eye test right there. You can see that. All right. So we'll move right into the review of the budget.
Duncan, if I could, I'd like to address the ongoing dysfunction of this board before we get started.
Do you feel like it's necessary on the first part, or you want to do on the second part?
Because I think people may leave after the early part, and so I'd like to get it over with early.
Okay. I'll allow it if you want to just go ahead.
Great, yeah, I'll launch right into it. At last Saturday's meeting, Chairman Rosen called for an end to the immature and unprofessional behavior on the board, and for the board to conduct its business professionally. I followed up Duncan's comments with a specific recent example by reading into the record parts of an email that Commissioner Fry had sent to me to my personal email account 3 weeks ago. Since there are some participants at this meeting that were not at the last meeting, I'd like to read into the record again portions of Commissioner Fry's email. Mike, no response is necessary or wanted, but you are the dumbest motherfucker that I've ever met. That opening was followed by 10 or so additional paragraphs of hearsay, innuendo, and conspiracy theories. And then Commissioner Fry threatened, feel free to post this email or be like AJ and whine at the board meeting that I called you a dumb motherfucker.
Yeah.
And it made you cry. It'll be good for some laughs, at least to me. Also at last Saturday's meeting, Lisa Walker asked what assurance the public had that Commissioner Fry would change his behavior, and he doubled down by stating that he stood by his email comments. Less than 48 hours after being asked to conduct himself professionally by both the chairman and the public, Commissioner Fry sent me another email that said in part, Mikey, you're still a crybaby. That opening was followed by several paragraphs of how Commissioner Fry feels disrespected with some conspiracy theory thrown in. Then he continued, if you can be an adult during the meeting, so can I. But until you show me respect, I have no desire or intention to show any to you. Haven't you realized that when I send a note to you, it isn't a violation of sunshine? But when you forward it to other commissioners or respond to me, cry and whine about it to those commissioners, you are violating the law. And you have them violate the law when they respond to you. Again, feel free to forward this to anyone that you wish. I recommend not forwarding it to other commissioners, though. There could be repercussions for you and them if they respond to you. Notice that in his emails, Commissioner Fry is threatening me and trying to weaponize sunshine laws to cover his own bad behavior. I welcome Commissioner Fry trying to convince a district or state's attorney to prosecute his perverted interpretation of sunshine laws. This is not only personal between Commissioner Fry and I. He's making a mockery of this entire board, the public that we represent, and the trust that 36 voters placed in him when they voted for him as one of their elected fire commissioners. Commissioner Fry has a long history of harassing fellow commissioners, district attorneys, district accountants, fire chiefs, and the fire department staff. One notable example is the November 2021 meeting when Bill Fry, then not a fire commissioner, tried to monopolize the meeting, was told that he was out of work. He signed off the Zoom that day with double middle fingers to everybody present. That was childish and unprofessional behavior. Commissioner Fry, and I believe the other 3 commissioners take our positions as fire commissioners, the safety of this community, and the spending of tax dollars very seriously. You, on the other hand, have accepted an elected position, yet are fundamentally incapable of working collaboratively with anyone. Your childish and unprofessional behavior, as evidenced by your recent emails to me, brings shame to you, to this board, to the North Captiva community, and to your own career military service. Your shameful behavior has created the current climate of distrust and dysfunction on this board. I hope for the benefit of this community that we can get back to conducting our business professionally. Thank you, Duncan.
Thank you, Michael. I don't think it's appropriate to do the back and forth, but I do think it's appropriate for Commissioner Fry to respond to what Michael said, if you choose to do so.
Yeah, so in the past, I've let the nonsense that happens in these meetings the last 9 months go by. And now this is a 7-minute meeting that you've taken up talking about it. And it was almost 5 minutes at the last meeting. I send you an email outside the meeting to not waste either the board's time or the public's time. But you're the adult that forwards it to everyone that wants to forward it. The only reason that I made the comment about sunshine is Bill Burns had a soliloquy of 5 to 6 minutes at the last meeting a week ago about all of the supposed sunshine or public meeting violations that this board or that Duncan or I as the secretary have violated. So we can have as much discussion back and forth in these meetings as you would like to have, but I am not going to stand for you making any snide comments or picking at anything that I say just because in the past I have let it go. I am done letting it go during the meetings. And so you figure out whether you can be an adult at the meeting. I could be an adult at the meeting. Respect goes both ways. If you haven't figured that out yet, then I'm sorry for you.
No, well, it's funny.
And now I've finished my comments.
So
Move on to
I
the budget.
suppose, I agree. So I suppose that I'd recommend at this point to reset, restart, just like I did last time. Obviously that didn't happen. If the two of you can, shake each other's hands and say, look, let's restart this chapter as board members and public officials and professionals, and offer each other the level of respect that each one deserves. That's what my recommendation is. If we're not there, I totally understand that we're not there, but that would be my recommendation. Yeah, LA, go ahead.
So, Bill Fry, does that mean that if someone doesn't agree with you, then you get to call them a motherfucker and a
No.
crybaby?
No, it doesn't.
Because you wouldn't do that at an open meeting. Why would you do it in an email behind his back?
It's not behind his back. It was sent directly to him,
I
a
mean,
private email.
Not in the sunshine.
I'll be glad to say it again if you want. But I think it's counterproductive.
What's not productive is you having a problem with someone not agreeing with you.
It
His
is
job
not-
is not to agree with you. His job is to represent his constituents. And I
Yes.
believe he does it very professionally, as I think many of you would say. You just have a problem when he doesn't like what you have to say.
No, ma'am.
Really?
No, ma'am.
So
I have a question.
yeah, Helen, go ahead.
Do you think it's appropriate to put that out there, to do that to people? I am appalled at the behavior. It's It's sickening, and I just like, I wanna know where you think that is okay. To me, it looks like bullying, and I know there are laws against bullying. How does this go on? How do we get anything done in this venue
Well,
when you keep putting, and obviously this isn't the first time that it's happened. I've worked with you on boards before, and it's a repetitive
Well,
behavior.
as chair, I think I have to be more strict with the conduct. Unfortunately, I didn't think I'd have to
It's your job.
moderate and, but it is my job, so I will step up and ask for more respect as needed. I wish the two of you would be able to squash this, but if you're unwilling to shake hands and start over, and I understand.
Okay, would you shake hands with someone that called you a motherfucker in a public meeting? Would you? Think
Yeah, a lot
about it.
of people,
And no remorse.
you know,
And
you just gotta
was
move on.
smiling and laughing about it and smirking and laughing. And he said he'd do it again.
Repetitive behavior.
He said he'd do it again.
I'm not condoning his behavior by any means.
No, I didn't say you
Right,
condoned, I just
but
said.
I just was asking for a restart, but we're not there yet. I totally respect that. I'd like for us to get there, and
Okay.
it's a challenge. It's gonna be a
Okay,
challenge.
so I do want to say that it is your job. It's like a child that gets away with unacceptable behavior. The longer they get away with unacceptable behavior, the more they're going to do it. And that has shown to be the case here, because no one wants to stand up and say, unacceptable, not allowed. This is your position, and it must be done. So I'm speaking to you. I need you as the chairman of this board to step up and take care of this. It's your job.
We had this going on in previous boards. I served with Bill Fry for 4 years. I have an entire folder full of documents of similar vein. We asked him over and over again to do the same thing, to stop doing this. He was asked to apologize for some of the crazy things. I'm talking so vulgar that I wouldn't read them in a public meeting. And this was years of this. So if this board thinks that you're going to change this guy's behavior, I think you're kidding yourselves. You need to marginalize him and get him under control, but you're not going to change his behavior. I'd be happy to give anybody any copies of this stuff if you'd like. It is public record.
Okay. As chair, I will give you my word that I will do my job to make sure that everyone is as professional and respectful as possible. What I do ask of the two of you, and I'm not placing blame, but Michael, for example, if something is said, let me try to address it before we do the back and forth. Let's try to handle it that way, and vice versa. So let's hopefully reset here and see what we can do. I'm not a guidance counselor by any means, but let's go ahead and move on to the
But what
review
have
of the
you done
budget.
about it other than ask them to be nice again? I mean, because this
Well-
wasn't Michael doing anything wrong. This was Bill Fry doing something wrong.
So
And you
I
haven't said that. You said you guys.
So I do see that there is some there is sarcasm as a result from attacks, which is to be expected. But so I guess, I do not condone Bill's behavior. Okay, I can say that publicly with the emails, and I'd like for this not to happen. I'm a professional myself. You don't see me going around and, yelling at the table or whatnot, or sending emails. So I don't condone those emails by any means. And then Michael, I just ask, do your best to, just bite your tongue for now until we can try to get this under control. I mean,
That's great. I think Lisa's got her hand up.
yeah, go ahead, Lisa.
Good morning, everybody. So at the last meeting, there was discussion of an official code of conduct. What is the board and specifically you doing about that to take it to a next level, other than to ask for everyone to play nice?
Sure, we discussed that if needed, we would look at a conduct code and civility code. Obviously, there was another email that was sent. And this, I think during the second part of the meeting today, we can assign one of the commissioners to come up with a specific conduct or civility code. I think that would be appropriate and have someone enforce that conduct code.
So that's an actionable item that's gonna happen.
I think we should assign someone to do that, but on the second part of our meeting that's non-budgetary, I think that we can continue that conduct and civility code discussion.
Great, thank you.
All right, so moving on to reviewing the budget, review of the budget, Chief Cottrell and Commissioner Fry.
So on the PowerPoint presentation, I'm on slide 2. What does the board actually approve in the budget process? The board approves revenues, and it's the revenue number that becomes the total budget number. I'll dig deeper into that in a few minutes. The budget spending number as a total bottom line number is what is actually approved. Again, that matches exactly what our revenues are. Any changes in detailed lines, either in paying benefits, operating expense, or in capital, or debt payment.
I apologize for interrupting. Is there any this up on the screen? Because nobody here has any.
I don't have an ability to do it.
You can share. Are you logged on to the Zoom meeting?
I'm not. Can you log on to the Zoom meeting and share? I don't know how to do it.
Does anybody want copies? I can make copies.
If we can do it from the main screen.
It's 40 pages of stuff
It's fine.
for the whole meeting.
I thought you just meant this stuff. It's like 9.
No, we'll go, it's 12 or 13, and then we'll go into
Anyone else?
5 pages.
Open it up so you just share this.
I'll do it.
Okay. Thank you. You may have to allow us screen sharing.
You're gonna have to do that on that machine.
You want on this?
That's fine. We can do it. You know what? I might be.
He's got that, they've got to authorize to share it.
Jesse, why don't I plug this in the back?
I'm just saying. Looks like it's set for sharing.
Yeah, right now it's just one participant can share at a time.
Okay. I'm just getting the link.
Will you share? Oh, it's good. Advanced that much better. No.
In progress.
Take this down and set it up there and also.
What's the table of participant sharing? It says it's still the same.
David's our expert on Zoom, I think.
Well, you got something going over there that you're gonna work, you not gonna work.
I think they're doing two different ways.
You ready?
Yeah, I'm trying to.
Hang on.
What document you trying to hear?
The PowerPoint, the presentation.
Working budget presentations, excellent.
Working budget.
Yes.
Thanks, David.
We have it over here as well. We did.
Yes, it has to be on that thing for the audience.
I just want to have anybody to move it.
All right, so you guys see it over there?
I'm working on it.
No, on the Zoom screen.
Yeah.
Yes, we can.
Oh, they got it there.
Yeah. Right. What?
It is there.
Yes, it is.
So on page 2, the question at the bottom, what does the board actually approve with the resolutions? Again, it's the total numbers that we are approving at today's meeting and at the second budget hearing are the total revenues. Based on the total revenues plus the starting balances of what we're projected in the current fiscal year with becomes the total budget number. At the July hearing or July meeting, we set the tentative rate at 3.15 mils. It generates $943,325 in gross. That's before early payment discounts. This says in August, and in fact, it was the August meeting that was continued to the 2nd of September. We approved the special assessment roll for $666,042. That net number after estimated early payment discounts is the same $447,400 it's been for the last 9 years. And in September, as I said, we're going to do the set the numbers for at the end of this meeting, and then we'll set the final numbers at the end of the next second budget hearing. Next slide. So for those that don't know what the documents look like, all of these are hot links from your computers or your tablets or your phones. You can actually open up the documents, page 4. So this is a screen capture of what was briefed to the board a year ago. And again, this is what demonstrates or what shows that whatever the numbers are for ad valorem, that's a millage number, or the assessments, that's 447,400 net. That number hasn't changed, as I said, in 10 years now since we processed the last year of the assessment. And again, the hot link over on the left-hand side, it shows it's to that same budget resolution, slide 5. So at the July meeting, there was lots of discussion about whether we should include capital, whether we should include pay and benefits increases for a full-time 4 or 5 day per person per day per week fire chief who lived on the island. This is an example, just shows the examples of what I'm talking about, that the numbers on the bottom don't change. They're based on what the revenues are. And on this slide, this is just a revenues or source of funds slide. Any questions about what the slide shows? Because this is an important concept for the 5 folks that voted at the table. Next slide, please. Same thing on the where the money goes or uses of funds.
Go ahead.
Where the money goes, again, that same number is the same bottom line. I see what you're talking about. Slide's the same.
Yeah.
Sources. Well, go to slide 7. Slide 7 shows what I'm talking about, that the bottom line numbers for total uses of funds don't change. Thanks for catching that. That was the same slide we had last week.
Yeah.
I didn't change it. That the one before.
Understand.
Again, this is the same slide as last week. The idea is that no matter what personal services or paying benefits, operating expenses, capital outlay, debt expense, the total expenditure number on that line is different, but the total uses of funds, once you add in the expected ending budgeted balance or the cash carry forward a year from now, that reserve number, that line, essentially is a balancing calculation. Doesn't matter what the numbers are, how hard we fight about what the uses of funds are going to be, when we leave the meeting, all we're voting on is the total revenue. Once the total revenue is decided, the expenses, the total uses of funds are exactly the same. I thing to remember is that this board only decides revenues. We have no control over the day-to-day expenditures or execution of the funds that we approve. The monthly treasurer's report walks through where we have variances month by month, or quarter by quarter, or year by year on an end of year financial statement. But the reserves is always the adjustment. So we can spend as much time as anybody wants today to talk about the detailed lines in the budget. And we'll bring that one up, not now, but when I finish the presentation part, so that we can walk through anything anybody wants to talk about. Any questions that no matter what the detail lines are on that 3-page Excel spreadsheet, the total approved budget is the same number. Next slide, please. So here is a summary of what the revenues are at 3.15 mils on the left side. That now is the maximum that we can approve at today's hearing and at the second budget hearing as the final millage rate. We can go down, but we can't go up. This is now the maximum level of ad valorem and special assessment revenues that we can have. On the right side, we'll have a detailed 3-page document that I'll go to after I finish the presentation to talk the details. Where these come from is the detailed line of salaries and fringe benefits. There's a single Excel document in the briefing packet on the website that has the details of how those numbers are created. And then the sections for operating expense, capital outlay, debt service, and total expenditures. Notice that these are only total revenues and total expenditures. On these slides, I did not include the starting reserve balance for October 1st, this coming October, or the budgeted or projected ending balance for the 30th of September 2024. Next slide. So this is the detailed pay and benefits piece, bit of an eye chart, but if you're looking at it on computers or on the printed document, it's the 5th page of the detailed Excel spreadsheet. Again, these are the proposed changes in pay and benefits. Same discussion. So this is the same slide from July. It's the same slide we talked about last week. So unless there's questions. Next slide. So the key points in the 24 proposed budget is that most of the lines you'll see in the detailed Excel spreadsheet match exactly what the last board approved. Neither Chief Cottrell nor I have any real capability in the last 2 months to dig through and try to do what we used to call a zero baseline budget, meaning you zero everything, you revalidate the numbers as you start a new year. So I just assumed all of those were the same. Where the decreases are pay and benefits, it's because that now that our full-time chief, our permanent chief is Chief Cottrell, we have no requirements for any of the staff for medical disability insurance, since those are all paid by their parent primary job employer. Legal and bookkeeping, there were reductions in those lines. From what I recall, last year there was a $25,000 stub stuck in the budget for some kind of performance evaluation of districts. And as near as I can tell, there's been no information on how that's been done. That's the main reason legal is being decreased. Rentals and leases, we now have only one boat after Ian, so we were paying $1,000 a month in lease payments for 2 docks. Now it's one. Same thing for fuel. We're only running 1 boat instead of 2. We did plus up in the budget amendment Although I think I saw an email from Chief Control that indicated that we may not actually spend that $23,000 this year. It's spent. It's ordered, but not paid. Correct. It's ordered. So there'll be a question with the auditor whether we count that as an expense for this year or as an expense for next year. Bottom line is it doesn't matter. If we don't spend the $23,000 this year, that $23,000 drops to the ending reserve and we spend it next year. It's the same number. That $23,000 for PPE is to replace 10 sets that were damaged due to the flooding from Ian a year ago. The August meeting, we selected Chief Control as our permanent chief. And at the last meeting, at least 3 commissioners agreed and decided that we would not spend any time talking about capital purchases. After hiring our permanent chief a week ago, I don't have a way to figure out what our capital requirements are, and neither does the chief, I think, to be fair. Someone at one of the meetings, I think it was the July meeting, said, well, why don't we just use an average of the last 3 or 4 years? And so the average of the last 3 or 4 years is to buy a garage for $275,000, I think, spent to date on the project, or to buy a brand new fire engine at $240,000 on a lease purchase process, or a new utility vehicle at $27,000. None of those things are going to be, at least I don't think, necessary to buy in fiscal 24. Could be wrong.
You could easily strip out those items and still have an average of the last 3 or 5 years. There would be no problem.
That's all we spent. That's all we spent. So we're gonna, if you pick a number that has no relationship to what we see as a future requirement, there's no reason to stick it in there. Because at the beginning of the year, it's going to come out of the projected ending reserve. In a budget amendment, it comes out of the projected ending reserve. It's the same money. Any other questions about what the key points are in the changes? Slide 11. One of the questions, I think it was Van that asked at the meeting a week ago, was had I done budget projections for 25 and 26 when we do not have the special assessment. This slide or this data is provided and has been in various briefings and presentations and Word documents provided to the board, posted on the website for the last 9 months. The changes are in the assumptions. The top half is how I calculated potential revenues. In the assumption that I made back in November, I said that we would see a 10% increase in taxable valuations. That was after we saw a 26% increase in taxable valuations for fiscal 23. I made the assumption that the reason for the 10% was that the taxable valuations do not include new construction. They do not include the 10% annual increase for non-homestead properties. 80% or more of our properties on the island are owned by non-homestead, non-voting property owners. And so their annual limit is 10%. And for those that homestead, their cap is 3%. Also, what's not included in that is any sales of properties that then cause a year or two, closer to 2 years later, because of the tax assessors, essentially it's a lagging process. But any sales that happen on a homesteaded property, or in fact a non-homesteaded property, resets those caps closer to what the purchase price is. So for this year, for fiscal 25 and fiscal 26, instead, I did say that I assumed a 10% increase on average. Because of Ian, I assumed that the reductions would be in total valuations, not in capped evaluations. It appears what the tax assessor did is they actually made what amounted to a $32 million reduction in taxable valuations this year. So I assume my calculation assumed a $30 million increase. It was actually $32 million. Then the Ian things took it back out. So I have reasonable confidence that a 3% cap still is something that's attainable. There's still sales that go on the island. Homes that were severely damaged after Ian that have been repaired should have an increase in their taxable value at least the 3% per year cap if they were homestead properties.
Just real quick, that number, it says estimated total value in millions. For 25, you have 308.
308 million.
So that's a 3% increase.
Yeah, this year, you'll see it, the yellow number where it says FY 23, 303.52. That was what was the appraised taxable value, capped assessment values for this current fiscal year, 303 million. We had a $32 million increase. Roughly 30 of that was for the 10% increase that I thought we were going to see. But then all of it, and I think $12 million of that 30 was in new construction that came on, but then they subtracted out $32 million taxable value.
So, but going forward between 24 and 25, you would expect, you only have it as a question, is that a 3% increase there?
It's only 3%.
And then another 3% in the 0.6.
Yeah, I believe I'm severely underestimating, but
That's,
it's the reason that that's an important assumption is that I believe the budget that historically has been approved without the building or without putting in a $240,000 fire engine, we balance at somewhere around $1.2 million in annual spending. And that's kind of where our target for revenues have to be. What in the early years, if we don't attain that 3% assumed valuation increase, that means we don't create or get the $1.2 million in revenues in FY25 without the special assessment.
All right, that was the whole point of my question.
Yes.
I think you might have answered it. The only difference though is you have increased the millage rate each year. So it starts out, well, it was 3.1 last year. This year you have the 3.15, and that's for debate today. Every week and a month.
And the special assessment disappears.
And the special assessment disappears. And so then in 25, you have it up to 3.7.
That is our constitutional limit.
Understand. So that's the maximum that we could set the millage rate at these 2 years.
Right. And so when Jesse identifies the detailed spending 9 months from now at the June monthly meeting, we'll know what his proposed spending looks like in fiscal 25, 9 months from now, 10 months from now. And we'll have an idea whether the full maximum millage rate is required or if there's no way the rollback rate can cover it. The numbers, my view is that in the early years without the special assessment, it's going to have to be maximum millage rate. As I stated at the June meeting, state law is a maximum millage rate requires a unanimous board vote.
So if this meeting today, are we setting the final millage rate today, or is that the 23rd meeting?
So the way the budget process works, it is that at the July meeting with the tax appraisal's office giving us what the final values are before any taxpayer makes a complaint or value adjustment or change through a petition process. They told us on the 1st of July, 2nd of July, that it was $299,468,000. So 1st of July, we get a final budgeted valuation that we then at the July meeting do a tentative millage rate. That tentative millage rate has to be provided to the state and the county by the end of July. And that goes into the trim notices along with the date that we set for this budget year. Into the trim notices that are mailed out towards the middle of August each year. That sets what our tentative rate is. It identifies what our calculated rollback rate is, and it tells the public in that trim notice what our first budget is. At the first budget hearing, we take a second bite at the millage rate and a proposed budget. Remembering that when you decrease the millage rate, the total value and revenues drop. That becomes the new budget, total budget number in the way the state reports the trim process. At the second budget hearing, and I believe that we have to set that at the end of this meeting, this budget hearing meeting. My belief is it has to be either the 23rd or the 30th. Those are Saturdays, and we can do that at any time. It can be a weekday, Monday to Friday. It has to be after 5 p.m. So we basically get 3 bites at the apple through resolutions to set millage rate. The one we do in July, the one we do today, and the one we do in 2 weeks.
We don't have to change, we can stay with the 3.1 that we set. We don't have to finalize that until the last meeting.
It's correct, but if there's no consideration of a millage reduction, then all of these slides stay the same. I don't create proposed budgets or change numbers in the documents. I can calculate them on the fly here at the computer if we do a reduction. But you won't see any of those reduction numbers in the document. Any other questions? We can go on to the other. Next slide. So other than this document here, I ran numbers to see what total taxable revenues would be with various millage rates. The current FY23 revenues on the far right side shows you $940,000 net, 940,000 gross before expected early payment discounts that are as much as 4% when folks pay in advance. And that net is assumed to be $912,000. We're pretty close to that number now, minus the $20,000 of EN refunds that were processed. The rate that we approved, next column over to the left, is the tentative millage rate that we approved at the July meeting. And that gives you an idea what that total revenue is. Those other 3 columns, rollback millage rate of 2.8007, a millage rate going as low as 2.25, or a millage rate going down to 2.5, gives you those percentage increases or decreases in tax for the typical non-EN impacted taxpayer. So if you processed the forms to get an EN reduction, you're not considered a unimpacted taxpayer. So you see the different things for revenue net after discounts, and you see the 447,400 is the net. It appears to me we're going to be closer to 450. The discounts weren't as large as Renee projected. She more cash to the district. And the bottom line numbers down there. So that's all you're gonna get if you don't make a decision for me to rechange or to change any of the detailed budget Excel sheets. All you're gonna see is the summary. Again, the summary is the only thing that we're voting on, not the details. Any questions about the different millage rate calculations or options? Last slide, please. So, we have to make a decision on what the date of the budget hearing is going to be. It has to be at a minimum 10 to 14 days from today. The reason I say as a minimum is we are required to create a $2,500 advertisement in the news press that none of us on the island receive. If we have a tax increase, and if we don't have a tax increase, if we at this meeting decide to go to the rollback rate or lower, then there's no tax increase and our cost for the ads drop down to around $500 to $700. The difference is tax increase requires 2 quarter-page ads to show the tax increase and to show the sources and uses of funds. No tax increase, there's no minimum size of the ad, and it would be an eye test advertisement, the smallest the news press allows. My recommendation today is that I believe that we should be looking at a 2.5 millage rate for fiscal 24. Essentially, that 10% or 10.5% rate, the 12.5% rate at 3.15 that we approved 2 months ago would offset the 10.5% increase that the board approved a year ago. It still generates additional revenues. You saw in the last slide that we did. A rollback rate of 2.8%, 2.8 mils is no tax increase. It generates about $96,000 in additional.
So you lost me.
Without cap.
I'm sorry, Bill, you lost me there for a minute because you were saying we have to set the date for either the 23rd or the 30th for the final budget hearing.
Yes.
And the reason for it had to be
10 to 14 days. Sorry.
10 to 14 days out is so because we have to advertise, we have to
Yes.
put in the press.
Correct.
The trim statute requires a couple of wickets that we have to pass through. One of the wickets is that we have to create what the ad looks like. And you can't create the ad until we know what it is that this board's going to approve at today's meeting. The second wicket that we have to go through is the law requires it to be advertised 4 or 5, I don't remember now, 4 or 5 days. I just called it 5 days to round up. 5 days in advance of when we schedule the budget hearing, the second hearing to be, it has to appear in the news press 5 days before that. Actually, I think it says between 3 and 5 days before the hearing date. The third thing is that being a Saturday, we'll have 2 or 3 or 4 days before I'll send the stuff to Ms. Mooney today, but my presumption is to be 2 or 3 or 4 days before she gets the ad submitted to the news press.
So if we're going to, so essentially today we are setting we have to set the millage rate. Or we could, at the next meeting, drop even further if we decide not to raise the millage rate today.
We can't.
Not right, you can't raise it, you're gonna lower.
Right,
So-
but I'm saying, we would have to be at least at 2.8, the rollback rate. If we don't today decide to do it, let's say we decide to do it at 3, for example.
Yeah.
We would have to start the wheels in motion to.
Yes,
to
it's
advertise
the
the
two quarter-page ads that we would have to. Anything over you put in. Anything over a 0% tax increase requires a 2 quarter-page ads,
Okay.
news press.
Let
And
me
we
have
have,
one quick comment, just a procedure, because I want to help you out with this one, I think. This meeting is where you guys should really nail down where you want to be.
Yeah.
And the second meeting is almost a rubber stamp. So do your heavy lifting now. Right, you can't go up from here, and all the questions should be resolved out of the state. You guys agree with that?
I do, in fact, I think, maybe as the meeting started or just. I made a comment, to the public, I think that the second budget hearing can be a meeting as short as 15 to 30 minutes if we had our fights today. Because, we ought to have an idea coming out of this meeting, what we're going to go budget.
very good.
So today, we can, approve 3.15, which is what we approved in July, you can't go above it. We can choose any number below it. I would not recommend going below 2.5. I believe, at least today, I believe that we should be looking at a 2.8 or a number between 2.5 and 2.
Lisa has her hand up. Lisa, go ahead.
We haven't, this is
Okay.
all
No,
commissioner
no, if you
time.
wanted to answer her question.
But this is all commissioner time. I want to make sure the commissioners we haven't opened up questions.
Fair enough.
We've got a whole nother, spreadsheet.
Yes, we do.
Yeah.
Because the basics for all of the stuff I've talked about today and last Saturday and in July is that 5-page detailed Excel spreadsheet.
Got
So these are the recommendations that I believe we had to come out of the meeting. The minimum is we have to do a resolution for 3.5. I believe it should be smaller than that. I would like it to be no tax increase.
Well, I have a question.
Yes, sir.
On $1 million house, which is averaging out here. $1 million house, what would be the difference in taxable revenue, 3.15 and 2.8?
Somewhere around 400.
Thank you.
Round number.
Right.
So no, if there aren't any questions on the budget presentation from the commissioners, then I'd like to go to the,
I'll make a
Work.
comment.
Yeah.
So I had made the same comment in last, in the last meeting, so I feel very strongly that I will not vote for a tax increase to the district whatsoever. So I will be voting somewhere between the 2.5 and 2.8.
and I keep saying, I believe that.
Given the change
should
in
be no higher
the,
than
in the command structure, the organizational structure in the company, I don't feel like there's a need to give an increase to the district.
To help explain why Duncan may be getting to that point, or why I'm at that point, I'd like to go to the detailed spreadsheet and go to the
Did you want to take any
fourth
questions from
page.
people or not yet?
Now, I want to go to the budget for commissioners.
Sure.
Then you open it up for public comment
Okay.
after we talk.
This one, Bill?
Yes, sir. Go to the third page. Fourth page. Next one down. So this slide has not changed. This document has not changed since the July meeting.
So I have some questions on this when we start or you want to.
Well, first I want to do what we used to call the bottom line up front. And that should help focus folks' questions. That's okay. So the bottom line is that if we decide, since we decided to do our new max millage rate of 3.15, again, that was the decision we voted on at the July meeting. That's the number that went into the trim documents. This is how I calculate where our ending reserve will be. And you'll notice there's a difference between the reserve estimated September 2022, a year ago, and what I think the audit updated number is. We still don't have an approved audit, but they did give me that one page out of the draft document that they're working on. And what that document showed is roughly $135,000 increase in what our starting reserve was for this year, 9 months ago. 11 months ago. Once that number was done, the various changes in the budget amendment we approved at the last meeting a week ago, it resets what that starting number looks like to that $568,000. Based on the calculations of a 3.15 millage rate and the maximum that we approved for the special assessment, the detailed spreadsheets show that our ending reserve would be $853,000, not including capital, but also not including insurance proceeds, any kind of FEMA reimbursement to any, or any of the other mash and trash things that are not even guesses at this point. Our minimum cash balance going into each fiscal year should be enough to cover us for the first 2 months of every fiscal year. Tax bills go out during the month of October, but the first payments don't start showing up until in the district's bank accounts until the middle to end of November. So we have to have enough money in the account or access to funds to be able to cover those first 2 years. Money's either in reserves or line of credit.
That's where you get 70%.
Yeah, that's the number that Renee always briefed. But if you think about where the 17% comes from, is there are 12 months in a year. Each month is 8% change, 8.33, I think, percent of the year. And so 2 months would be 16.6. So the minimum cash reserves are the 17%, or about $300,000.
Well, this is the key chart because
It absolutely is a key chart.
first of all, I disagree with that 500,000 that the line of credit we have. It's there, but it's for emergency use only. I think it's not something that we would dip into. We don't want to dip into it to pay for those 2 months, for example. You know,
The district used to.
yeah.
During the rate
And maybe it was necessary at that time, but that is just sitting on the sidelines waiting for something unforeseen to happen. It shouldn't be calculated.
I won't disagree with your comment, but what I would tell you to do is then just just ignore everything.
But then I cross it all out.
So the important line still is an estimated 853,000 in reserves, and the important lines in that number, the minimum is 200,000. That leaves 650.
So you really, the budget that you have, but that's with the 3.15 millage rate.
Yes.
Okay, and then the difference in revenue between 3.15 and the rollback rate is how much?
I have that.
100. It's in that slide. It's 140,000. 100. That one.
Between the 2.5 and 2.8.
Yeah, that's fine. Between 3.15 and 2.8, net revenue 915.8. It's 100,000.
100 grand. Okay, so that if I were to redo this chart and instead of 3.15 we did 2.18, then that total.
2.8 to 2.8.
Sorry, 2.88. The total would be 753. Would be the.
Yes, sir.
The line there in the middle would be 753.
Yeah, and so if you, I've actually done the calculation for you. If you can go back to that one slide again. Yeah, if you look at the very bottom, just above the red line, it says the number is 752,258.
Bill, do you happen to have a round number of the additional spending made as a result of Hurricane Ian? Just because, you know, hey, look, we're talking about reserves. How much did we actually spend in excess? Do you know that number off the top of your head?
So On the pay and benefit side, that number is relatively clear. We spent about $35,000 or $40,000 in excess overtime. Because we paid everybody from the start of the hurricane executive order until the 23rd, 4th. They were all paid time and a half. And so that extra time and a half is about $35,000 or $40,000. Said a different way, we do about $35,000 a pay period in payroll. We have, I believe our real starting, it'll be adjusted a year from now, and after the auditors verify and tell us what we include and not include, like bunker gear, we don't cut the check before the 1st of October, whether they'll let us count that still as a fiscal 23 cost. But just in cash numbers, it appears that we may have $50,000 to $70,000 in a higher ending reserve. Money that that's budgeted but not going to get spent this year.
But in total, the Ian spending
In
that
total,
was not budgeted, how much do you have a?
I don't, because I can tell you what it is we've spent, but I can't tell you what it costs.
The reason I'm asking is, you know, when we're looking at this illustration,
It's under
you know,
$50,000.
when we prepare for the next Ian, you know, I want to make sure that that is, you know, in our reserves, you know, so 17%, you know, is yes, what was recommended by Renee at the time, I remember that, but, you know, I just wanted to know that number, just so we have another Ian.
We spent about $50,000.
Okay. A lot of which FEMA may reimburse us.
Yes.
Yeah.
And recognizing that we didn't, the fire district didn't pay around $65,000. That was paid by the UCC.
And I think,
So I think that's the neighborhood of the two numbers.
and I believe the fire department actually got out pretty flat during the year. It was a lot worse.
Sure.
Oh, but if that would be, in my mind, reasonable stuff, overtime, next hurricane, yeah, we need 50 grand or something around to support that. If it gets worse than that, that's the line of credit, then
Sure.
we use that, right?
After we exhaust reserves.
Yeah, right. So I think that's, you know, in my mind,
Mentally having an extra $100 grand in there for a hurricane type of event is probably not far-fetched.
well, and Bill, that's honestly, you know, when we start talking about capital, I get your point, and I accept the fact that we're not going to put into the budget any capital estimates because it just, we don't know.
Yes.
We have this guesses, and we keep the guessing out of it. So I guess that's fine, but everybody now has to then say, okay, how much do we want in this reserve? How much do we want to have in there for capital? And that's gonna be subjective, and we're all gonna have to think about it. But if we say, in my mind, you know, something in the neighborhood of you know, 100, 200,000 is probably reasonable for capital expenditures to cover us in the event we get shafted by FEMA or the insurance money doesn't come in like we need to. We got roof, we got windows, we got staircase to fix. And we haven't even gotten to the fun stuff like a boat or you know, any sort of new equipment. So I think we're gonna need a little bit of money in out of the 735 or the 853, whichever number you pick. There's gonna need to be we're gonna be spending some of that over the next 12 months. And again, how much is the question? The other
Data, the numbers you threw out there, roughly, you said 100 to 200 for maybe capital, call it 150. You said 50 to 75 for hurricane, call it 50, so I can do the math easy, that's 200. A rollback rate reduces the excess cash from 655 to 555, roughly $1,000. Subtracting another 200 would still leave 300,000.
That's about what I came up with.
Excess.
I think the big hole in that though, and I think what's important to discuss is this budget contemplates a reduction in service from what we've had in the past, going from 2 votes to 1.
It doesn't complicate, it doesn't give you anything of that nature. Unless we're gonna talk about approving a capital budget. As far as I know, no decision by this board or even the chief has been proposed to buy or not buy the second boat.
I don't disagree with that, but in the last 5 years, we've had 2 boats operating, not 1. So this budget is built with the operation of 1 boat, not 2. I understand we haven't had the debate yet, and I think eventually we're gonna throw it to the public and say, are you willing to pay for the increased service to have a second boat? Let's call it a response boat here on the island. I think Zeke made a good point in the last meeting that it's kind of ridiculous to be on a bridgeless barrier island and have no response boat. The current transport boat sits at Pineland, brings people over in the morning,
No, it's called a crew boat.
crew boat, whatever you call it, brings people over, drops them off, picks up yesterday's shift, takes them back and sits at Pineland. I pointed out 2 examples in the last meeting where any kind of response that's required out here, be it a boat on fire in Safety Harbor or a kid drowning on the sandbar out in the Gulf, all we can do as a fire department is roll up there and wave at it. And I think that's a problem. I don't know if that, maybe nobody agrees with me. I think that's a serious problem. And it's a problem for the budget because we got $0 in there for that.
I think we have $0 for leasing the second dock, which is $6,000 a year.
Right.
And we have $0 for gas, which
Right.
is $4,000 a year for response boat. Roughly, based on what I've seen, the breakout of the numbers running the crew boat every day, twice, a round trip a day, but rarely taking response for that. I didn't change anything in repairs and maintenance. I inherited the numbers you all approved a year ago. Our repair and maintenance costs have actually dropped. That's the biggest line of what we haven't expended this year.
Mhm.
Because some of that was spent on maintaining a golf cart, maintaining the UTV that we replaced, maintaining second boat, maintaining 2 old fire engines that we now have. 1 new one, 1 old one. I have no idea. Like I said, I can't dig it. I haven't figured out a way to dig into the details to figure out how much our spending has decreased in repairs and maintenance for particular end items. But I can just tell you that we're well below the budgeted numbers from a year ago. Didn't change those numbers.
Right, so you're ignoring the capital expenditure because we haven't had the debate.
Yes.
That's my point. Thank you.
And unless we're gonna make a decision today on what it is we're gonna buy and what those capabilities are and.
Well, or goes to your projected reserve, if we say something has to come out of that projected reserve, if we're not gonna diminish service to the
Right.
islanders,
Right.
then it's gotta come out of that reserve.
Absolutely right. And all 5 of us will have a different idea that was subtracted out of that.
That's enough.
Till we had a discussion.
So just as a reminder though, to legally perform the transport services, just like we talked about in previous meetings, they're talking about probably an additional 3 firemen on staff. At least 2.
At least 2 firemen to do it safely and productively. And I get it, Mike says that can be a debate as well.
Sure.
But every other fire department in Lee County that has a boat, they send 3 personnel on it that are properly trained. It's a boat that is meant to be utilized for emergency response, marine rescue, as well as fire apparatus stuff. So we can talk about it, but it's a costly number.
At a minimum cost of $300,000.
For proper
For the boat.
For the boat, and then you have to look at the additional 2 people that you would need to add to that, and then the proper training for those personnel as well.
Is it fair to say that previously the way things have been done with transport, that was reckless in some ways.
Very, because when you leave two people on the island that are more likely to EMTs, you send the medic over with somebody that's running the boat, which we've had issues where people are running around at nighttime with people on the boat, but we're trying to take them over. My services to the island, this particular group of people is who I'm, in my opinion, who I'm responsible for. So you diminish services when you send two people off the island. That's the term we like to use, diminish services. I don't like that term, but that's what's happening for the next call that's here. Does it happen all the time? No. Is there potential for it? Absolutely. If the structure fire comes in, you have two people on the island, again, you're gonna drive two pieces of equipment to it and wave at the fire. As Mike likes to use that term, waving at people.
But is it more responsible to say you gotta call a captain and bounce somebody over there who's injured in a Carolina skip? I mean, that's the other option, right?
Well, that is a potential option, which we used to do prior to having the secondary vote here. That was the way we did things years ago. In the last 5 years, we provided a service, I believe, in my opinion, was half-assed, for lack of a better word. I'm not opposed to doing the actual response. I'm not opposed to doing a MERT response. I'm not opposed to taking people from this island to Pine Island so they can get treatment. I'm opposed to doing it reckless and putting our firefighters in danger and more of the people that are on the island.
And again, if we're not gonna solve the problem today, if we don't have a solution today, we should move on.
But this is a, major question as to what direction this district goes in, because,
Absolutely.
while I agree with Jesse that it hasn't been performed the way it should be after he educated me about the program and I read up on it a little bit. I don't know what that I agree with that concept of not being able to send people off, but for now, we may be able to look at private captains. I had a conversation with Alex Murphy the other day about, having someone on call at a certain time. Alex is a great example, or a great option for that. So I think we have to continue. This is going to be a very big conversation. This is a whole different
And
animal.
what's a private captain's liability in transporting a patient that's injured with no medical
Again,
support?
that person that, again, I agree with you. That's not what would happen. The person that is going over by a private captain would be a person that has signed out AMA that they don't need, a medical transport. If I need to get them over, then I'm gonna call a MERT response, which is either gonna be Captiva or Pine Island or Sanibel or whoever is able to come get that patient, just like they would respond to a MERT response in general.
Yeah.
They are qualified to do that. They have the proper equipment to do that. Currently do not, or the personnel.
So if I break
And
one,
never have.
so if I break my arm and I have a choice, I can potentially hire a boat captain. You would assist in hiring, finding me the.
We can help facilitate me to get all that.
Facilitate it, but at the end of the day, I'm hiring a boat captain to get
That is one option. We used to pay for that. We would pay the $200 fee for Charlie Crea, Zeke McDonald. Other people would take people off that. That was a fee that the department incurred. I'm not saying that was right either, but that's what we did in the past.
that we have to assess.
There's options at hand. They may not all be palatable, but there are options.
But your other option, Dan, would be to somebody call a helicopter and you get helicoptered off and then you deal with your insurance to see what your portion of
But a
the.
broken arm get called.
I agree, yeah.
No, we can fly you off. If you want to go off, we'll come get you. And that is now an ambulance cost. It's not a helicopter cost.
Yeah.
Lee County EMS has already spoken to us in reference to how they bill for residents on the island. And it's an ambulance ride, not a helicopter ride, which is what it was in the past.
Yeah.
So that is different and
Fair enough. And I agree that this is a big debate that we need to have amongst the commissioners and the chief and probably with some public input. And we don't have time to do it before we have to decide this village thing today, but my point is that the projected reserves should take that discussion and whatever the result of that discussion is into account. and this is the last year that we have the special assessment in any form, unless we redo it somehow in later years. And so, unlike Duncan, who has lobbied for no tax increase, I would I'm currently leaning the other way and saying this is the year with all of the uncertainty that we have to have a higher reserve, not a lower reserve. And I'll leave it at that.
We're still in commissioner. So
So
we've gotten off track because we can't make a decision yet.
well, I'll also,
These were good, these were good comments
Sure.
to bring up regarding our reserves.
So we're still on the slide that's on the Zoom screen. That number of 655, you decide, the majority of us will decide what that number looks like when we leave this meeting today. If it's the rollback rate at 2.8007, then that excess cash drops down to around 555 in round numbers.
So what?
In round numbers, 555, 100,000 less than that, roughly. So then in your own minds, you're deciding what that minimum number needs to be. If you believe that minimum number is that, then the rate you're going to go to is 3.15. If you believe that it's the rollback rate and no tax increase, then it's around 555. And you're subtracting out what you personally think in your own minds what our capital spending is going to be next year. So none of us have a firm idea what that is.
I mean, most likely, if we were to do a marine transport or a transport service response, you know, we would have to do a budget amendment and go down that road.
Right.
And I'm not so sure that it's hard to actually budget for something like that now when we have no specifics about it. So that's the only reason why I don't think right now is the appropriate time to have that in our reserves. I think, you know, I learned a little bit from the last hurricane that, okay, you know what, looks like we do have an extra 100,000 in there from, you know, in the reserves, in the proposed reserves, at 2.8 and even at 2.5. I mean, I think the reserves are still larger than I had expected, and we would be okay if a hurricane were to hit us again.
My point, Duncan, is if you don't have it in the reserves now, with special assessment going away, by Bill's own projections, you're nearly break even in the first couple of years moving forward. So you're not gonna, I don't believe we're gonna build reserves in the next couple of years after the special assessment goes away. So if you don't have it now, it's probably off the table.
Again, I believe ignoring, backing back out the building, the ute, and the tenant, fire engine. Backing those things out, it appears that we're actually going to be at the end of this year, we're spending about 30,000 each pay period paying benefits. We spend somewhere between $75,000 and $90,000 a month. We have about $153,000, I think, after the budget amendment, we approved the bunker gear. It appears we're going to finish, my guesstimate is $50,000 to $70,000 unspent. That's not included in this. The $20,000 that's currently, or 21 or 22, that's currently in the impact fund is not included in this. We'll transfer that money after the start of the next fiscal year. We already have a letter that the county attorney's office signed a year and a half ago authorizing the district to do it. I don't really know why it wasn't done in July of 21. It wasn't. Because at that point, there was about 14,000 in the impact fund that could have been transferred to help pay for the new garage. The letter that we have from the county says we can transfer that 14,000 and every dollar we need up to the total cost of the new building. I was facetious, joking, but not far off. It'll take us 100 years of impact funds to pay for the new garage. As we only generate around 1,500 to 2,000 a year. That's the one area we don't budget for, either in what we think we're gonna get or in spending. Budgeting moves the money by majority vote of the district. So again, to finish up on this slide, that's why I wanted to go to this one first before we talk the details. This is the most important snapshot of where you want to end at September 30th, 2024, end of fiscal 24 with that a hoped for or a budgeted or an expected reserve. So if you want to take out the annual line of credit total, those last two lines offline, this is the bottom line. And if the commissioners are good with understanding what this is saying, then I'm more than willing to go to the next slide, fifth one. That's the pay and benefits. Are you able to click on it and do full screen review? It may be that, well, I was gonna say, maybe that symbol on the far left side.
Top right corner, there's one with the arrows.
I gotta have that top bar.
Oh, so never mind. And it, again, this hasn't changed in 3 months. This is the same stuff that was posted on the website in late June, early July. So are there any questions about how these numbers are created? Again, the key takeaway from that one slide was that it includes hourly raises for all the part-time folks except for Chief Cottrell, and it adds a proposed, it's $240 a pay period as a new retirement contribution. That's 10%. So that's where his raise kind of would be coming from if we approve that. And these numbers assume that we make the raise effective the first pay period of January, which is the second, third, or 4th of January. Not the first pay period of October.
So I have a question. I don't know if this is now time to answer or not, but when we looked at that projections for 25 and 26, we had forecasted a, thank you.
No, you want the slide presentation around slide 10 or 11, I think.
Yeah,
that one there.
that was it. Thank you. So if we go with no increase or a decrease in, you know, we go at 2.8 or below now, in a year from now, we're gonna be having a discussion, and I think you even said, you know, life doesn't exist unless we're at the maximum 3.75. What would a jump be? You know, just like what?
Round numbers 50%. That's a 50% tax increase. That's how we have to advertise. But remember that 50% is roughly a $400,000 increase that on the ad valorem side that offsets the $447,000 in special assessment. So it's an advertised, essentially going from 800,000 in round numbers. Essentially going, if we approve the rollback rate, that was your question.
Yeah.
That's about $800,000 in net revenue, going to 1.2 million in net revenue.
Yeah.
So that's a 50% increase. Remember that if we had approved the max millage rate for this year at the July meeting, that would have been a 33% tax increase. That either would have been approved at that number or less. We approved less, and adjustments in the special assessment. We made no adjustments in the special assessment. Now, again, we're not the only district, especially barrier islands. I want to say Sanibel. I was on a conference call with the tax appraiser's office 2 months ago, as we were working to trim submissions Because everybody had freaked out when the rollback rate, in our case, generated $100,000 less in revenue than current. Typically, everybody's always said rollback rate gives the same revenue. Well, it turns out it doesn't. It's the same cost for unimpacted taxpayers. So Sanibel was talking about it. I want to say it's like a 70% tax increase just for them to generate in their significantly reduced taxable values, assessed values, just to generate the same number of dollars as they generate this year. They would have had to have announced a.
I don't know the exact numbers, that sounds right, but
It's the neighborhood.
exactly.
I was shocked when I heard it, and after I thought about it, they got way more than we did. So the bottom line is that in the future, it's a unanimous decision of the commissioners to approve max millage rate. And for next year, if we don't approve millage rate and go all the way to the maximum, and I think that's what we have to do next year in fiscal 26.
So
That's a 50% tax increase the year we do it.
So
And we just have to be able to explain to
do
everybody,
you want to,
it's not a dollar increase, it's a percentage. Yeah, it'll be fun.
well. and
But we
so-
knew it was gonna happen.
So here's how I net it out. I mean, if you got to take Mike's perspective and I don't want to speak for you, but I think you're talking about keeping it at 3.1 this year.
3.15.
And we decided that if we go down to the rollback rate, that's about $100,000 difference. So the question is that when we look at 25, and let's say, everything else is equal, we'll have $100,000 more hanging out in our reserve or, available to us. Does that allow us to feather in the going up to the max building? In other words,
Instead of going to 3.75, you're talking about going to 3.6 or whatever.
Yeah, smaller taxes.
smaller, incremental as opposed to this hockey puck. Where we give, we reduce it now and we keep it flat. We can do that. I think that it appears that there's enough funds in there to make that work. But then if you look out the next year, here it comes.
That's a 6 of one, half a dozen of the other question, because it's the same numbers. It's still a tax increase, whether it's a 40 or 50% tax increase or 35% tax increase, it's still a tax increase. On percentage millage rate, not in tax revenues. I mean, if you look at this slide where it says net tax revenue at 3.15 is for fiscal 24 is 915,000, and then at max millage rate in fiscal 25, assuming at least 3% increase in taxable values, that's $207,000, I think. At the rollback rate of 807, that's roughly $320,000. That's where I got the 50%. And real calculation, I'm not getting what doing in my head. Going from 800,000 to 1.12 is closer to 40 than 50. The bottom line is that's a discussion for next meeting, next year. It doesn't matter percentage-wise for future years. The only way that it matters is if you do what Mike says, you leave it at 3.15, and we still consider a year from now, we'll still be talking about what the millage rate should be.
Oh, sure.
And we won't be able to say what that number is until Jesse and I put together the budget.
And
But
the
I'm
rest of
assuming-
these other things get resolved that are hanging
Yeah.
out there, the
Both
damage
on-
to the building.
both on the revenue and-
FEMA, insurance reimbursements,
As long as they.
lawsuits.
Right.
2 lawsuits that are hanging out there, no offense, chief, but you're working 2 full-time
I
jobs.
understand.
I know we approved last time, but we're getting a discount on your total pay and benefits that is going to disappear in the future. Because either when you go full-time after you retire from Bonita Springs, or God forbid it doesn't work out with you, or you just say, hey, I don't want to work 2 full-time jobs, then our costs are going to go up dramatically. So that was my point earlier. We've got a number of what I consider to be extraordinary things, both revenue and cost hanging out there right now. And I will just repeat that I don't think it's the year to say, let's, stand on a no tax increase, soapbox. I think to be prudent for this district, this would be the year, in the final year of the special assessment, to drive the reserves up, because we have the opportunity in every subsequent year, depending on how all these things shake out, to reduce the millage rate and bring the reserves back down to a level that we all agree is sufficient once all this crap shakes out.
And on the flip side, I think we're essentially agreeing that there are these uncertainties, but on the other side, I look at it as, okay, well, we may have to do that budget amendment because there are so many uncertainties. We don't know what the insurance is gonna pay out. We don't know what FEMA is gonna pay out. We don't know, and do we have enough to get us through the next year? Yes, I do believe so, but, there's so many unknowns, so that's another way to look at it.
I agree.
Okay, could you give me a little attitude based on my experience? It's on this slide, and I'm kind of twisting and turning over here. There's one line item here that really bothers me, and that's that other income line. We all see that, all the projections going forward, 87,000.
I got that. Yeah.
Okay, the comment I would make is that that's $50,000 of assumed charitable contributions. There's been no explanation about where that comes from or what's its purpose. It runs year after year after year. The assumption that that revenue is coming in. You've got years projected out where you have no excess to begin with. So you're making the assumption that you have to get $50,000 of charitable contributions every single year. And that's also, the 87 includes interest income.
Right.
I can tell you as a financial planner, yes, go ahead.
I'm sorry.
You got my point?
Yeah, no, I understand, and I have that circle.
Okay.
And I not brought it up, but I do believe there's a couple of things on the details that I don't disagree with. I'll get to the details. I'll spell them out here in a second. But I think what Bill said earlier is correct. Today is not the day to fine tune the line items as much as it is to set, the income level coming of taxes. I believe that my total was about 100,000, it came out to $90,000 of what I would consider corrections in here. It includes $50,000 that AJ talks about. I do not know, maybe it's just my ignorance, what the TIPS grant is all about. That showed up.
That's always been there. That's it's called the TIPS grant.
Yeah.
$5,000 that I believe it's our, it's our workman's compensation insurance plan that gives us a reimbursement, a partial reimbursement or cost share.
Okay, so I'm down to 85. The other exception I have is the reduction in legal fees, given all the stuff we have to deal with. We brought that down from 50 down to 20. I think it should be, that's one of those unknowns. I believe the 50 is just out of principle. But I think, and I lost my page here, here it is. When I look at it, if I even take, I take our, and whichever line item you want, 560, 753, if it's a rollback rate or the 853, if it's a 3.1, you give that 100,000 off for the, you know, the T's and C's on the line items. And a couple 100,000 in for capital expense, then we're still in you know, ending up the year with significant reserve balance. So I think when I don't necessarily disagree with you about the vote and transfer and all this stuff, but I think that even given those things, you know,
So,
I think there's enough money.
I think it would be better, instead of throwing out different line numbers, figures, go to page 1 of the Excel, consolidated budget. No, yes, page 1. So these are the detailed numbers that AJ and Van are talking about. The $50,000 for donations, that comes from, in some years, I guess I should use past experience on donations and some not. But AJ, you'll recall that there were some years that we had between $25,000 and $50,000 in donations for road work. You'll recall that, well, actually, I guess Helen recalls when we started, and Bill, when we started the special assessment and we started paying for paramedics, we had something like $70,000 to $100,000 in various equipment donation dollars to buy medical mule, defibrillators, and all those kinds of things. That $50,000 isn't a number that I made up. I think it was Van that said at a February meeting when we were walking through the Joe Peters contract stuff, is that we ought to be able to get a donation if we identify what it is we want, 50,000 a year. I stuck it in.
Sure.
But the number doesn't matter.
Well, it does, but you know, just like when we said, we don't know where these capital expenditures are going, right? And so we agreed to take those out, and you know, the reserves fluctuate. Got that, but then we have the speculative item there. We don't know where it's coming. And until we do, I think, you know, if we have a island-wide referendum and they decide that our emergency response is called for, we come up with a dollar figure and we don't have all the money for it, I think a fundraiser would be an excellent idea. And it's going to be a hell of a lot more than 50,000. So I think, you know, but I think if we're just consistent in these things, that wouldn't be in there because we don't really know where it's coming from. And you might be right. I mean, we might get a windfall there, but we don't know where it is.
The last donation I got about was the tractor. So what it sounds like we need to do is start at the very top on the first line of this Excel spreadsheet, and we do a vote of, and whether we have 3 people that say take it out or leave it interchange.
I say let's not do that.
We have to
We don't have to dive into the details here.
Like that.
I think we can look at this things, you know, and everybody can, you know, if you have objections to it, like I said, I'm at the 85,000 that I would say probably needs to be, the budget will increase. Anyhow, yeah, the budget will increase by about 85,000. And that, you know.
No, the revenue would decrease 85,000 in the budget, and the spending. Which may changes to the spending lines, those don't change.
Yeah, well,
But there's increases and decreases, and again,
well, that's what I'm saying.
it's the revenues that are the most important thing to discuss.
If I take out the 50 grand for the charitable contributions, that's a decrease in revenue. And then we're increasing spending by 30,000 if we put it back in, you know, we get the legal fund updated. That's where I get my 85,000. So,
Are there 3 commissioners, let's talk the revenue lines. Are there 3 commissioners that say, start at the top? And we're gonna ignore the revenue millage rate question to the very end. Are there 3 commissioners that say reduce the interest earnings 15,000?
Before we go through this, I mean, do you feel it's necessary to go?
I don't think we should go
I-
through line by line. I'm good with broad brush strokes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We're trying to get to a millage rate, so broad brush strokes, pluses and minuses at the end, I think are the way I'd like to do it.
Do you agree, Bill?
So which of these lines do I change?
You don't change any of it.
It's just
Right.
discussion.
It's just discussion.
Oh,
You said at the
okay.
very beginning that this thing doesn't matter. The only thing matters is the millage rate.
So then,
Yeah,
Dan, where do you
But
see?
the revenue side.
So I'm, in my mind, when I look at the reserve total, I'm taking 85,000 off the top, just because. And then from there, it's subjective how much capital we want to include in that thing. And my, let's say my total, that's another 200. So let's say round figures, 300,000 off of what we have on the millage rate, on the 300,000 reduction in the next year over into our reserves. That still puts us, if we go to the rollback rate, that still leaves us with 7 minus 3 would be 400,000, 453,000, sorry.
450, but 200 is required to get through the first 2 months.
No, he's already subtracted that.
No, I didn't. So you're right. You're right. So then it'd be down to 200,000.
Right, so we're down to 200 of true reserves plus the 500,000 line of credit, which we all know is short term, not long.
Right, yeah, we wouldn't want to use that
Unless we're in the dire
If I
straits.
may, I agree with Mike saying in reference to the millage rate buffering the reserves until we can hammer out what the Islanders want long-term and also the unknowns for the future.
There's another part of this unknown that makes me uncomfortable. And that's it, and like you said before, it takes a 5-0 vote next year to go to the full millage to balance this budget. I'm not totally convinced that between the 5 of you, we have a 5-0 vote. I hope so. So that is a little bit of a concern of mine on, reducing that reserve rate to, if we need to offset that, if it's for 1 vote or whatever it may be. But to sit here and say we're going to guarantee a 5-0 vote next year makes me a little nervous. So making sure we have enough in that reserve account to maybe offset that vote if it happens. That's a great something to consider.
And then next year is the year that we actually, Tom and I can work together and provide a capital budget. Because again, we didn't know what was happening this year with the chiefs, who we were hiring, what was happening. So it was we were kind of in limbo essentially. And I didn't want to dig into something and then we hire somebody and then that person changes everything anyways. It would have been not wasted work, but it would have been work that would have been undone.
So Michael, you're at the 3.15. Van, Bill, you're somewhere between 2.5.
That's what I was going to suggest.
2.5, 2.8. Okay,
I believe we need to go around the table to find out what our number is in our head for a millage rate from all 5 of us, and see if there's any consensus.
okay, well,
Because at some point, we have to have a vote of 3 commissioners to pick a millage rate.
Don't you think a public comment would be appropriate sometime
Not-
soon?
We are still in the discussion phase of the board. Everything that has always been the case is board
I'm just
discussions.
suggesting that the public comment might influence what you're about to go. I'll defer to you guys.
well, I think, that's where I was going with this conversation without, asking people specifically one by one, but if you want me to, if you think that's the best way to do it, I can. I'm right now somewhere between the 2.5 and 2.8 before public comment. So when I hear public comment, that I obviously welcome, that number may change. Bill, do you want to start?
Sure. I've been sitting here listening to everybody, trying to digest it. And I do listen very well, and I do give a lot of thought to this. And my position is quite clear. It's not going to change 3.15. Tom nailed it perfectly with what he said as far as unknowns. This is not the year to be lowering things. This is not even the year to be standing pat. because a year from now, we're gonna be $450,000 less, no matter what we do. And, you know, there are too many unknowns out there that have gone around the table, too many questionable things. I think we need to be secure in what we're doing, not because 5 of us sit around the table, but the entire population of the island, as well as all the renters, visitors, and workers, count on us. They want us to be there, and we cannot, under any circumstances, not be there for them. So therefore, I'm at 3.15.
Michael?
I'm at 3.15, because I feel like we are in the last year, of the special assessment. And if the reserves do happen to go higher, despite all of this uncertainty, and with respect to getting to a maximum millage rate in next budget season, which I think was a very good point. Wherever the reserve lands, we can reduce it when we have had the time to work through all these issues in subsequent years, be totally fair to the tax base, but there's just too much uncertainty right now. I'm at 3.15 in order to build the reserves, because the future is uncertain.
Bill?
I'm at the rollback rate of 2.8007.
Dan?
I'm gonna change where I sit next.
A lot of strategy in there.
No, I
Next time we should call him first.
I agree. I think what we gotta do is feather in any sort of increase in taxes. I think a dramatic 50% increase in our taxes would be, even if we could, you know, play back to everybody this meeting, if we could vote for no tax increase and they see this huge one in 25, I just don't think that's fair. So I'm going to go with the 3.5.
Okay. So I think we can open it up to public comment if there's any, if any of the commissioners don't have anything to add. David Bowman.
So I want to be careful what I say, because you guys have been elected by me and others to do this work. And you've had access to a lot of detailed documents and stuff. So I'm not suggesting that I know and understand it, but from hearing, listening, feels like there's some part of this maybe that's upside down. And that is everything, numbers matter. And the bottom line is bottom line. And you guys are having to make a decision between a number to what percentage of 3.15, 2.8, whatever. No one's talking about level of service. And our community, in my opinion, this is David's opinion, our community expects a certain level of service from the fire district. Commissioner Burns talked about that in his description of 3.15, but there's a level of service that's expected. We're in a barrier island, we're at risk for a number of reasons. Access to transport and all those other things, day and night. And that level of service, I don't know if you guys as a collective have said, this is whatever we choose between these choices we have, although you have some limited choices, here's the level of service we have to fund. That whether it's going to be a tax increase or whether it's not, if it's not the level of service that's required and it's reduced level of service, the community is going to be affected. If you guys handcuff yourselves today by reducing that number today, and you don't get, and you're not going to, it didn't sound like you're going to get any comment from the public about what level of service they want, then by the time it comes to actually voting on it, you're hosed and everybody's going to be hacked. Now, there are going to be those fiscal conservatives that said, I don't care what, I want a tax decrease or I don't want an increase at best, not understanding what impact that has or could have into what you can do. Because when you guys get to the details, like once you've set the mark, here's the funds, now you've got to figure out what you're going to do. What are you going to cut out? If you set it unachievably low, then important things to the public are going to get lost. And I've heard no one talk about level of service. And you guys are making a decision today without discussions about, like, I mean, Jesse even said it. Sorry, Chief Cottrell said it. He said the transport, the boat, whatever the budget, you could do it this way, you could do it that way. He's had a week to think about what level of service he has. Chief Martin had a vision of the level of service for his budget. I'm not saying it was good or bad or indifferent. I'm just telling you he did. And he executed things according to that. You guys worked with him to figure that out. And you guys came to the middle ground. Chief Cottrell is now going to have a vision of what level of service he's shooting at. You guys need to decide to support him or not within what you can, because you've limited abilities now because special assessment was voted down. Sorry, special assessment. So I don't know how. Maybe you guys have talked about level of service, and maybe you've gotten your head around what decision you make today, how it's going to handcuff you or not. But if you haven't, I would encourage you to give yourself some wiggle room, because if you don't have wiggle room, you're going to put yourself in a bind that no one's going to be happy about. You suddenly find out, holy smokes, we can't transport someone off the island. I want that. If my dad has a health event, I want him to be able to get off the island in the middle of the night. And I would hope this is Richards Bay Island, and UCFRD is not the same as Sanibel or wherever else we're going to drive an ambulance out there. There's different considerations for that.
Thank you, David. Bill?
For level of service, though, to clarify, this budget is basically the same level of service that we've had for the last 11 months. As I said, the dollars in the detailed lines, except for the handful of lines that I listed, that's the level of service. It's the same budget numbers as the last board approved. It's the same level of service.
At what rate? 3.8 rollback rate?
At any rate. Again, at any rate, the spending stays the same. What changes is what the projected in the reserve is. What I'm telling you is that on the spending side, which pays for the level of service that you're talking about.
Right.
This is basically this year's level of service. We haven't had a boat to do transport, to do evacuation since September 26th, a year ago. But all of the other services, whether you're talking about a fire engine or a utility vehicle or an ambulance, all those services are still the same. So this is because Jesse and I talked about it, we could not figure out where individual lines need to be plussed up or minus. The level of service is the same. So, and we're about 50, it looks like we're going to finish the year about 50 to 70,000 unspent at this year's level of service.
So let me say it a different way, I guess. At least 3 of the commissioners expressed concern about reducing the reserve, given whatever choice they make. One of them talked about that at 3.15 to keep that reserve that amount. I'm saying if you're choosing not to change the reserve or make sure you've got money in reserve, it does affect services because it's going to stay in reserve. It's not going to be from operational budget. So I'm saying
it's going to come out of that reserve to pay.
No, well, yeah, it would unless they approve a military hire to keep the reserve where it is and keep level of services.
So
again, you guys
again,
my point. I'm not going to get into big details because that's not my point. My consideration for the board is just to be sure that whatever you're deciding, that you don't handcuff yourselves unnecessarily, and that you're understanding that it sounds like there's potential for not being able to provide the same level of service going forward, particularly once the point where it is, right? But that's not what you're talking about today, I realize. That feels like that discussion is not that hand. I've heard no one talk about level of service. I mean, even in consideration of how
I'll remind the board, but I'll remind the board, I knew the boat specifically was going to be an issue. I think it was the March meeting. Yeah. I raised the issue. We couldn't come to a decision because we didn't have a permanent chief who as you say, has a vision for services, specifically MERT. Same boat for MERT as patient evac.
So,
So we knew we were gonna have that problem, we just haven't dealt with it.
so Lisa Walker, you've had your hand up for a long time, so go ahead, Lisa.
Looks like she's lowered her hand and dropped herself. Oh, well then,
Lisa, did you have a question?
Sorry,
All right.
I was
Oh.
sorry, I was talking away and I didn't know I was muted still. I have lowered my hand on occasion, if you have noticed, but I absolutely agree with what David just said. And listening to your response, Bill, and comparing the level of service to the last 11 months, I don't particularly think that that's a right approach, because none of us want to compare it to the last 11 months, because 11 months is less service not having a boat. While the rest of the firefighting remains the same, it is still considered a less service. And so I think I just, I'm really puzzled if, you know, and to be honest with you, this is my first really, really strongly paying attention to this budget stuff and learning how you guys are doing it. And I apologize that I haven't done it before. And I appreciate the it's enormous efforts that's gone into this. It's really, truly amazing. And I hope more homeowners do pay attention to this. But just kind of globally, I'm really puzzled when I sit and listen to, like, comparing to what Sanibel's going through, for instance. I mean, we really, while it's been horrible since the hurricane, we really survived in quite a good place. And so what if we didn't next time and we were in a situation that Sanibel's in now and home values don't increase like we're hoping they do? All of the things that is amazing to me that goes into these forecasts and projections, but what if they aren't? And, you know, we're still, well, we're in hurricane season now. And so it seems to me very puzzling that we are even discussing this at such detail and such fiscal conservation because of where we're at and because of where we've been. And I guess I'd like to know, just kind of, if someone has the capability for us homeowners to understand, when you speak of these rates, what kind of an impact does that mean down the road?
Well, I think, well, just a second ago, I did some quick math. We're talking about the difference in millage rate between the rollback and the 3.1 is roughly $100,000 revenue to the district. In very round numbers, that's $250 per household.
That's what, I'm sorry?
That's saying 400 homes on the island divided by the $100,000 divided by the 400 homes, roughly $250 in increased taxes, or the delta is $250
Per household.
per household. Now that's average, obviously, you know, different, you know, there's valuations and it'll fluctuate. But it's in that area.
So $250. So
There's been some very callous statements made in the past about, you know, it's only $300, you know, that's a night out, and technically that's correct. But I think the board is sensitive to spending the money wisely, and that's really the balancing act here is, you know, we don't want to short cheap Cottrell. But we also don't want to be frivolous in spending people's money.
well,
So
and
that's really the juggling.
well, and I can say thank you. And I mean, it is exactly what all of you have been elected to do, is to oversee, you know, the fiscal side of things. But when it's put into that light, I really can't understand why there has been even a discussion to reduce when it's such a low number and we're in an area of a barrier island and hurricane season. I really just can't understand it. So I appreciate all of you. And I think that if you were to If everybody was to get on here and speak their mind, I feel like I speak for the majority of homeowners here.
Thank you, Lisa. And, to your point, also, I want to, thank Bill Fry for all the time and energy that you spent putting these presentations together. This is Bill, yes, you're the treasurer, but, these are very thorough, spreadsheets. Every single line item is, has an explanation, whether you agree or disagree, but I think Bill certainly deserved recognition for a job well done on the numbers side of things. I know we started out the meeting differently, but we're in a different place now. But from a context point of view, I really appreciate the work that you've done here. So thank you. Go ahead, Helen.
It does, but the way we started the meeting out is how much trust is there. So it goes back to what Tom says. Completely what Tom says is, and that's why, I would support staying at the 3.1, just because no faith, absolutely no faith in the working together of this. And it goes back to primarily the way Bill conducts himself on board. I have no trust in him.
Right.
So because of that,
Thank you. Alex Murphy?
So I'd like to follow up what David said and what Lisa said. I mean, I agree with both of them. What both of them have to say. And look, I'm someone that, yeah, I'd rather have lower taxes, but we're in a year where we're losing that special assessment. And so we're looking at this budget with all the numbers on there. And like Lisa said, what if property values don't continue to increase? What if they start decreasing? I'm someone, I know a lot of other people out here that would like to see property values decrease. So with decreasing the budget, not the budget, with decreasing the mileage rate, if property values decrease, then we put ourselves in a bad position. And when it comes to the service to the island, the boats, those are expensive. You could get by with just paying one lease, because if you even went out here for a service boat for calls, if it was a month boat, the only time it would be going to Pineland or something would either be to get serviced or drop somebody off. Because you can bring fuel cans back and forth to keep it fuel. But we have still this ISO rating that's going in, which means if we decrease it and roll back the mileage, then if something happens and we lose that ISO rating, there's no insurance for homeowners. Because that the ISO rating was a huge part of basic homeowners.
but I don't think a lot of homeowners know.
They don't.
You're not going to lose your ISO rating.
If we don't have the staff and say, like we talked about, if you hire them, but if you have a private captain, you don't have the emergency response code.
That has nothing to do with ISO.
Well, no, it doesn't. But like I told Duncan the other day, because he said we got the conversation, we did. I said I'd want 2 paramedics with it because I would want to decrease the liability on my end as much as possible. And what if someone there's a call here, but paramedics are gone. They're decreasing the service to the island in its entirety.
The idea of having 2 paramedics would be one goes with an EMT and one stays here, right?
Then you would have a paramedic and EMT here, and if a structure fire came in, then your ISO rating would be hurt because you only had 2 people responding. So anytime you take anybody off the island, your ISO rating goes down. The more times you do that, more than likely you'll lose that ISO rating. So again, keeping 4 people on the island at all given times to respond to a structure fire is why you have that ISO rating, why you have that savings. So again, if we put a boat in use, it would behoove us to hire more people to man that and to keep your ISO rating down. And again, I've already said, I'm not opposed to doing anything. It's a matter of cost and the liability issues on that end of it. So, all right.
Thank you.
Where I'm leading to is that something that we really need to consider is hiring more people, trying to hire more people out here. And I know that y'all's been doing your best and working hard, and I'm very grateful for that. But when we're looking at the mileage rate is, there's been any discussion of having an independent accounting firm look at it, because we're looking at all the what ifs here. A lot of this is what ifs. And that's very hard to put a budget around what ifs. And Bill, I will say you did a great job putting everything together. It was easy to follow, but there's a lot of what ifs in there, and a lot of assumptions. And makes it challenging.
Well, and that's the reason why the five of us are at the table today and have to make these decisions, and I agree, there are a lot of what ifs, so thank you. Zeke McDonald.
Thank you. I think the commissioners are hearing from the public right now that that $200 is not important in terms of it's not important in terms of reducing service. I've said that completely wrong. I agree with Lisa, David, and Alex that and Mike, I think, is speaking with wisdom. It's real important to have a Marine service for Upper Captiva Fire and Rescue District. I think it's important to offer evacuation services to our constituents, even though it is perhaps a slippery slope in terms of total legality, in terms of liability, but we've been doing that for 30 years or so, and it has worked out positively many, many times. And I can only remember once when there was a helicopter crash coming out to evacuate a person where it hasn't worked out so well. So I think that we are experiencing a reduced level of service now. And I haven't heard anyone at the table or anywhere speak about the roads. The previous commissioners, previous boards have taken the roads into consideration in their budgeting and in their practices. I think AJ just did the best job that's been done in the last 25 years of maintaining and improving the roadways. I don't see anything in the budget that that would pay for that going forward. I think that Marine services are important and essential, and I think it's very important to prepare for ISO inspection. I'm not concerned about having a fireman or two firemen off island for 45 minutes or so, serving a constituent, transporting them safely to Pine Island. So in short, I implore the commissioners to vote for funds to restore the level of services that has been built by previous boards. I would like to remind you that you can always not spend the money, but you can't get the money if you don't have it, if it becomes necessary. And it's going to become necessary in the next year, losing $450,000. So that next budget year will be a telling effect on how good a job this commission has done. So I join with the rest of the public and three of the commissioners in going for the higher millage rate and preparing for the future with open eyes. Thank you.
I appreciate it. So
Duncan?
yeah, I have one comment to make real quick. So I really disagree wholeheartedly about the reduction in service that David Balmy and you and others are mentioning. Yes, the boat program, needs to be discussed and needs to be done in a legal manner and needs to be done in a professional manner amongst qualified individuals for that specific service. But let's talk about, the increase in the amount of paramedics that we have on the island, a staffing that's better than it's been in a long time. Let's also talk about our command staff experience versus what the previous command staff experience was before. I mean, I look at that as a big upgrade, and that's my opinion. So the boat is the separate issue that needs to be addressed, and I think we should have it on the agenda for the next several meetings and start figuring out what the plan is with the boat. But level of service reduction, no, I don't agree with that assertion. And from the road point of view, we discussed it at the last meeting. DRC just finished up, a month ago. They're paying for the final pass through of paying MHA for that, which we're grateful for. Now it's rainy season, so as soon as rainy season's done, just like AJ would have last year, previously, he would wait until rainy season and maybe touch up a couple areas here and there. But I don't think there's a reduction of service. So that's where I stand. You can disagree with that, but that's where I stand. Lisa? Sorry, I don't.
So Duncan, just to your point, the only reason I stated that about reduction of service was because that was Bill's retort when he based it on the fact that the 11 months, this past 11 months of service is what that comment was related to, which was the absence of a boat. I think that everybody over there has done a fantastic job since the hurricane. And I think everybody agrees about that, but I don't think that's a relevant comment when it comes to this vote. I think that the reasons that reduction of service is mentioned is because when there's a reduction in items on the budget, that reduces service. So I think everyone over there and the chief should be really patted on the back for everything they have done. So thank you.
Thank you. Bill, you had a comment?
Yeah, to correct Zeke's comment about not seeing anything for roads. The board a year ago approved $50,000 in the budget, and there's $50,000 in the budget proposed for that. So no change to that.
And there's also $50,000 of charitable contributions. And ironically, what I changed, I actually came onto this board with the idea of tackling that problem for the first time and changing it, because the mantra was, in order to have consistent road, you have to have consistent funding. And so there's a little bit of a shell game in there. That's why I had such a hard time about the charitable element in there. If you guys have a mechanism to pass along the revenue side of things among 700 property owners, instead of going out and begging for dollars, why wouldn't you do it that way? And this is the last year that you can do that, because as your projections show, you're going to be razor thin for a number of years going out. So I'm well, not that I think everybody said it.
All right, thank you. Do we have any additional comment from those of you on Zoom or those of you in the public or any commissioners?
Duncan,
Yes.
Duncan, hey, this is Georgia, and I couldn't raise my hand because I'm in the car and not possible. And like the others have said, I appreciate the effort and certainly understand the amount of time that is put into serving in the capacity that the commissioners do. However, I do agree with what David said and Zeke and Ashlyn, that it's simple economics. You get what you pay for, supply and demand. And yes, services have been given to the island this past 11 months. It's been crucial to our survival, but moving forward into just the next year, will the same amount of dollars be sufficient to provide the services, not only with the paramedics, but the fire personnel, the increase in replacement of equipment? And I think we need to really talk about the services, because not only are we seeing an increase in ownership, we're seeing new builds, all of the construction that is going on to repair Ian. $250 really, in the grand scheme of it, shouldn't mean a lot. That should be not what we're focusing on the cost, but in how we are protecting the island in its entirety. because the paramedics are crucial. And as are the fire personnel. And we have to be able to maintain the staffing at all times. Because if not, you're putting the chief in an untenable position. If you're not willing, if the homeowners, if the taxpayers, whoever is not willing to support the chief, then that's a problem. Then you're going to look at a long-term situation with employee retention, electing, another chief. It's a lot more difficult than just determining what the millage rate is going to be. And I just caution this board to really exercise their due diligence and doing what's best for the island in its entirety.
All right, thank you, Georgia. Anyone else? All right, so let's go to resolution 2023-006. A resolution of the Upper Captiva Fire Protection and Rescue Service District of Lee County, Florida, adopting the tentative millage rate levy of ad valorem taxes for said district for fiscal year 2023 to 2024, providing for an effective date. Whereas the Upper Captiva Fire Protection and Rescue Service District of Lee County, Florida, on September 9th, held a public hearing on the fiscal year 2023 to 2024 tentative millage rate as required by Florida Statute 200.065. And whereas the gross taxable value for the operating purposes not exempt from taxation within the district has been certified by the Lee County Property Appraiser to the Upper Captiva Fire Protection and Rescue Service District at $299,468, or excuse me, $299,468,306. Now, therefore, be it resolved by the Upper Captiva Fire Protection and Rescue Service District of Lee County, Florida, that, well, and now we can go into the, make a motion, but I read that part there, so.
And we also have to include in this resolution.
The date.
Is the date.
Correct. Yep.
Well, I'll move that the fiscal year 2023-2024 tentative operating millage rate be 3.15 mils.
There's a motion and a second. Any further discussion amongst the commissioners regarding 3.15 mils? Then we'll do a second motion, presumably on the date. Any public comment? Not to beat a dead horse here.
That is, the next block is 12.5%. So 12.5.
Okay. All in favor of accept or of the motion on the floor at 3.15 mils?
It's a roll call.
Excuse me, you're right. We'll start with, okay, the foregoing resolution was offered by Commissioner Burns, who moved the resolution's adoption. The motion was seconded by Commissioner Phillipsack. And upon being put to a vote, the vote was as follows. Commissioner Rosen, no. Commissioner Hammond,
Yes.
Commissioner Fry,
No.
Commissioner Phillipsack,
Yes.
Commissioner Burns,
Yes.
okay, duly adopted at,
Can't put the time in there
Yeah.
since we haven't answered that.
so now let's go into the setting a date. I know we do have some conflicts amongst the commissioners. For example, on the 23rd, I can attend via Zoom, but I can't be in room in person, but I can be here on the 30th. I think Jesse and Tom can be here both on the 23rd, so I think that would probably be the better date since they can be here.
I'll need to attend by Zoom also that day. But I don't know if we have a quorum.
23rd.
Yeah, the 23rd, I would
I
need to
think
be.
you are able to 23rd.
I know you and I were good for both.
Yeah.
I've got it.
I'm good.
For both?
Just the 23rd.
It's just 23rd.
30th, I can participate via Zoom.
And this is a meeting where we
This
This is the
final.
20-minute
That's-
meeting that we call the word meeting.
I would hope so. Because
Have we ever
as
had a
someone,
20-minute meeting?
we used to have,
Yeah.
the second budget hearing was 20-30 minutes, almost all the time.
Last year was 9 minutes, because I ran it, Burns couldn't be there, and it was 9 minutes.
And then.
That wasn't a criticism.
And that was 4 minutes of me trying to sign on to Zoom.
23rd, let's do it.
Okay, well, let's put it up to, with the vote, so.
We'll have the same guys make say, continue with the motion, so I'll make a motion that we schedule our
9-minute meeting.
right, that we schedule our final fiscal year millage rate adoption budget hearing for Saturday, 23rd of September, 2023 at 10 a.m. here at the Firehouse.
I'll second.
Okay, any further discussion amongst the commissioners or public comment? All in favor of September 23rd? Okay, so just to recap here, I'm gonna read this one more time.
Just
Three
now,
point one five mils, what's the percentage greater? Do you have that?
yeah, I was at 12.5%.
Thank you.
You did say that just number before.
Okay. So I'm gonna pick up where I left off. The fiscal year 2023 to 2024 tentative operating millage rate is 3.15 mils, which is 12.5% greater than the rollback rate of 2.8007 mils. The date, time, and place of the final hearing to adopt the final fiscal year 2023 to 2024 millage rate will be held on Saturday, September 23rd at 10 a.m. at the Upper Captiva Fire Station, 4511 Hodgepodge Lane, North Captiva, Florida. The resolution will take effect immediately upon its adoption. Okay, we already went into the resolution was offered by Commissioner Burns, second by Philipsak. The vote passed 3-0, 3-2. It's duly adopted at a public hearing this 9th day of September at 12:22 p.m. Ben, can you just put your leg, please? All right.
Who did say?
Yeah, give us the bill. What's that?
Yeah, you take it.
Yeah. All right, moving on to resolution 2023-007, a resolution of Upper Captiva Fire Protection and Rescue Service District of Lee County, Florida, adopting the tentative budget for fiscal year 2023 to 2024, providing for an effective date. Whereas the Upper Captiva Fire Protection and Rescue Service District of Lee County, Florida on September 9th held a public hearing as required by Florida statute 200.065, and whereas okay, whereas the Upper Captiva Fire Protection and Rescue Service District of Lee County, Florida set forth the tentative appropriations and revenue estimate for the fiscal year 2023-2024 budget in the amount of
$2,017,425.
now therefore be it resolved by the Upper Captiva Fire Protection and Rescue Service District of Lee County, Florida, that one, the fiscal year 2023-2024 tentative budget is adopted. Two, the date, time, and place of the final hearing to adopt the final fiscal year 2023 to 2024 budget will be Saturday, 23rd of September at 10 a.m. at the Upper Captiva Fire Station, 4511 Hodgepodge Lane, North Captiva, Florida. The resolution will take effect immediately upon its adoption. That's just, do we have to redo the?
No, I'll move.
Okay,
I shall move.
second. Mike.
Second, yeah.
All right,
Try to keep up.
I butchered your spelling of your last name. I have to.
K-E.
All right, so the foregoing resolution was offered by Commissioner Burns, who moved the resolution's adoption. The motion was seconded by Commissioner Philipzak, and upon being put to a vote, the vote was as follows. All right. Commissioner Burns,
Yes.
Commissioner Philipzak,
Yes.
Commissioner Fry,
No,
Commissioner Hammond,
Yes.
Commissioner Rosen, no. Duly adopted at the hearing this 9th day of September at,
I have 12:25.
yeah. Pass that over to the. All right, do we have any public input on agenda items? Any further input? All right, moving on to our second budget meeting will be held on September 23rd at 10 a.m. here at the fire station. Reminder, we do have our regularly scheduled meeting coming up after the break. I have a motion to adjourn for the first part of our meeting.
Move the adjourn.
So.
All right, further discussion or public comment, all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
All right, let's take a 10-minute recess.
Tetherball.
For recess.
Oh, that's probably not allowed.
I didn't stop the recording, but I unmuted. So you're not unmuted.
Thank you. All right. Good afternoon. The time is now 12:35 p.m. For the second part of our September 9th Board of Commissioner meeting here at Upper Captiva Fire District. Present at the table are the same commissioners, Commissioner Hammond, Commissioner Fry, Commissioner Burns, Commissioner Philipsak, and myself, Commissioner Rosen. Now we have less members of the audience. We have David Bolmy and Teresa Bolmy on Zoom. Lisa Walker, Ava Wong, Bill Burns, I'm assuming that's Jackie, Jeffrey Fox, Sarah Hammond, Dan Hammond, they're over here, oh, Dan Zeke McDonald, and Georgia Murphy. Okay, do we have any public comment on agenda items? Moving on, review of unapproved minutes. Let's dive into the minutes from last, what was it, September 2nd meeting? Is that what it is?
A week ago.
Yeah, a week
They're
ago.
not done.
Okay, so we'll table that for now. Correct? All right, moving on to the new business. Now, new business, I think we should add the conduct code, civility code in that section for the purposes of today's meeting. So I don't think we have to define that, but I think we should assign that. So I'd like to add that as 5C. And then what about impact fees? Bill, do you think we should add that to the new business, or you have it somewhere else that we can vote to use those impact fees?
I plan on doing that in a budget resolution at the beginning of next year, once we know what it is.
Okay, yeah, I just was wondering.
Then go away.
Okay,
It's just, I haven't gotten an answer from Elsie at the bank, whether we have a minimum dollar figure that we have to keep to not have these.
okay. All right, so 5A, resolution 2023-008, adopting commitments and assignments of the fund balance, Commissioner Fry.
So this is a housekeeping document. The last time this was done was 3 years ago. Even though Renee, the last 2 years, made changes to those numbers, created what I call a Christmas club or a layaway plan, or kind of the paper envelopes my mom used to use for budgeting that rent and different things went into. At the last meeting, at the budget resolution, the amendment set all of those values to 0. And the reason for that is that before, you had to do math in your head at each one of these meetings to figure out what our ending reserve was going to look like, because you had to add 200, 25, 5. Last July's budget amendment, last July, a year ago, a budget amendment by the last board had the approved budget that had 27,000 for equipment replacement, 27,000 for debt service. So basically the debt service, the equipment replacement, those things were captured twice in the budget, once in the capital side and the debt service side, and again in this restricted fenced reserve. So what I discovered as part of the audit process is that the numbers that were in the budget that you all approved a year ago did not match what Renee had put into QuickBooks and did not match what was reported to the auditor a year ago. Actually, I think 2 years ago, but the only one I looked at was last year. So anyway, we've already voted to eliminate those restrictions on those reserve funds. This would leave us the only restriction being special assessment. And that's a restricted fund only to be used for special assessment publicized costs. So when you look at the treasurer's report, I know we're not there yet, but it'll give you the picture of what it is that I'm talking about. On the bottom of page 3, the bottom of the table, but middle of page 3, you see all of those lines now. Farther, oh, sorry. Yeah, farther down. Right there. So you see committed for reserves endings, we approved at 0, committed for debt service reserve, we could set at 0. That 27,000 something is up in the right above it in the debt service line. Sorry, 22,675 is right above it in the debt service line. The equipment reserve 0, that covered the Ute, and the restricted fund balance in these. That's the only restriction we now have, and that's estimated to be 72,561 on the special assessment side. So all of those individual numbers now total to 460,871 total budgeted reserve from the budget that you all approved. $533,432. So that's the reason for the resolution.
Okay.
I'm not sure that I understand what this is doing.
It's a bookkeeping thing, prepping for the for fiscal 23. This supports the general ledger entry, journal entry for QuickBooks.
And this was the result of this is the rise in the reserves by the 135,000, is that what you said?
It's all kind of coming with the $130,000 increase in reserves is not in this. This is the fiscal 23 current year budget that was approved a year ago.
So that's up above.
That's
yeah.
next. That's in the last meeting and
Yeah.
the last one.
Yeah, okay.
This is just the usual monthly treasurer's report. And the only reason I've asked David to take us there is so there's a picture of what it is I just said.
Okay. Do we have any comments by the commissioners here? No, we do have to have a motion made.
So what's the impact if we don't do this?
It'll be a management finding in the audit fiscal 23, and it starts next April.
So the auditors have recommended we do this?
So I didn't ask. They asked me for the current fiscal 22 resolution. Sorry. Yeah, it would have been a 2022 numbered resolution for fiscal 23. They asked me for that for the fiscal 22. So it would have been a September 2021 document. And all I could find was a September 2020 document. It failed to get done. And
So this is something that should have been done every year.
well, it should have been done if you restrict or commit the reserves to a particular purpose.
Remember so this hasn't been done since 2020?
That's the only one I found. Think what the numbers were.
Doesn't mean it wasn't done.
So the numbers were in the budget amendment we approved last Saturday. The numbers were in the budget file. 200,000 committed for reserves ending, 22,675. Again, that matches the debt service line. It's kind of twice. And 28,000 for equipment replacement. That was for the Ute. And those three numbers together totaled 200 and, oh, sorry. I don't have what the number, oh, here it is. And The unrestricted fund balance ending was 145, 153. Now, you remember in the last meeting, and in prior presentations from Renee, she told us and told you all when we approved the budget, the 200,000, roughly in round numbers, is the number that should be in the unrestricted fund balance to be able to pay for the first 2 months of bills. What she had in the document was 200 and something. What she had in the budget that you all approved was 145. I was trying to clean the stuff up before the next audit.
I'm just a little flummoxed with this. AJ, do you remember this from prior years, or Zeke, or Bill? I mean, I'm just unclear.
I think, trying to remember, can you bring up the archive file for resolutions and see if if we still have 2021 on the website? Document archive. And while you're looking for it,
I don't ever remember, I don't ever remember seeing it over any number of years.
Yeah,
That doesn't mean it didn't.
So David, in 2021 resolutions.
Yep.
I don't remember seeing it.
I remember Renee doing an end of year budget resolution to tie up everything that changed over the years. And there was discussion between her and Bill. She would want to do one at the end of the year, Bill would want to do one every time. The change made, and she recommended waiting until the end of the year to only have to do it once.
What about looking to pull up here?
I was just hoping to see if any of those were.
Can you read that? No, it's gotta be a resolution. What's the number on the resolution?
yeah, I'm looking at the resolution file now to see if I can find the last time it was done.
Yeah.
Oh,
Well, that's the outside, that's A.
It's 2023.
Additionally,
So change the date.
But it would be a different number.
I got it.
Last year. Is this time critical, Bill?
No,
Okay, so why don't we table this? Look into this further.
Yeah, I'm just, I don't know. I hate to say I don't understand, but I don't really understand what.
No, let's table it for the time being until we look into it. All right, moving on to fiscal year 2024 meeting schedule. So I went through the dates. I don't know if you posted anything on that, Bill, but I
did not.
I went through the dates and I'm gonna read the dates that I thought were best fit, and then we can obviously have a discussion if one's around a holiday or if there's conflicts amongst commissioners. First of all, do we want to keep the Friday morning at 10 a.m. The norm? That's my first question.
Third Friday.
Excuse me, yes, third Friday of every month at 10 a.m. Yep, okay.
As I've said before, I have a preference for an evening meeting. But if we can get our meetings down to less than an hour routinely. The complaints that I hear from people I talk to that it's in the middle of their workday on Friday before they're trying to finish before lunch for a weekend is a problem. It runs 3 or 4 hours.
I don't think you'll get any argument that we would like shorter meetings.
I would need 2 thumbs up on that. Okay, so I'll read down the list here and I'll, stop me if you have an objection. October 20th, November 17th. Now that one is the third Friday right before Thanksgiving. It's that Friday before Thanksgiving. So yeah, I'm not sure if that is accomplished. Should we do the second Friday on that one? I have a conflict on the second Friday there, actually.
Open up my calendar.
So November 17th is the.
And are you proposing November 10th? That doesn't
Well,
work.
for me, actually, the 10th doesn't work, the 17th
Oh.
does, but I just want to see what, on the other
10th,
commissioners thought.
you're in Veterans Day. Well, it's the following day.
Yeah, the 17th is a full 6 days before Thanksgiving.
I'm good with so.
Yeah,
I'm good with it. Okay, December 15th.
Yeah.
January 19th, that's the week after Martin Luther King Day. February, yeah, I looked at, it was like the 15th. February 16th, now the 19th is President's Day, so that one may be an issue for some.
It'd be President's Day weekend.
Correct.
Is there a holiday issue, a federal holiday you guys can't have?
I'm just trying to make it even.
The meeting, the President's Day with the holidays is Monday, but February is the very start of the peak of rental season.
Right,
And therefore, there'd be a lot of people, not that they would show up here.
right. We're gonna entice.
Well, send them to Tice.
No.
So is February 16th okay with everyone? Okay with me.
Then if you have your Valentine's
Yes.
Day, I'll be rested up.
March 15th,
Yeah,
April 19th,
you've lost.
Sorry.
It's second. You gotta recompose. March what?
March 15th, Easter's on the 31st. April 19th. May 17th. June 21st. July 19th. August 16th. And then to follow the pattern, September 14th.
No, September the 7th
Would be the 7th.
Yeah.
or Saturday,
Check for Labor Day.
Labor Day is the 2nd.
So September 7th. And then the second date would be voted on.
Yeah, but I would suggest we pencil that in.
2 weeks to be 21st.
Can we
Yeah.
do the 14th and the 28th instead, or
It-
I'm out of the country on September 7th, 2024.
But, I don't have a problem with either one. The only thing I would point out.
Problematic.
Was what I was gonna point out today, if we decided on the 30th, is if something happens, our backs are against the wall, we're out of time.
Like one of the three quorum votes, because like the 23rd is three people in the room.
Right.
If someone fell off the boat or
I'll try not to.
but didn't show, then that date wouldn't happen. And
Right.
unless there's a hurricane executive order, it doesn't occur. My recommendation is the 7th.
Could we notice, the 23rd and the 30th and just cancel the 30th? I mean, if.
Why we do that?
Well, just in case, you're down to 3 people that can only attend, what if there's an emergency? I mean,
For September meetings, I'm always here.
okay, I'm just saying in the
So
future,
you're always here.
that might be the way to do it.
Bill
Around.
is always here. Van.
Yes.
The only reason I suggest that we talk about the second budget hearing meeting is so that those of us that still haven't made plans for any of those weekends, they can at least know which meeting they're making.
Okay, so September 14th and 21st, is that where we're going?
17th and 21st. Has to be at least, sorry,
No.
7th and 21st.
Do that.
Has to be 2 weeks between meetings. If we
Okay,
do a budget increase and we're
that
done.
might be.
And do budget increase.
So,
Out of country every time.
I'll be 6 hours, one way or the other. I mean,
I did a Vancouver meeting a couple of times. It was the second budget.
I'll vote for you.
we'll send in my proxy.
We're gonna create a.
Remember, the July meeting is where we have to set the tentative millage rate. And that July meeting has to have 5 people in the room for a unanimous vote.
Okay,
That was July 19th. Yeah, no problem.
So just, everybody needs to be aware, it requires a unanimous vote according to the trim statute, which means all 5 of us has to be in the room. Oh. Well.
I don't think that.
That's not true. The note I sent you,
Right.
I had it, the note I sent you says we all get a vote.
Right.
You just have to have three. So, unlike one meeting.
Reboot. Do we need a vote on this or?
No.
You said the dates.
Okay, so to recap,
We
October.
used to also do, pencil the October, November, December dates. 2024. October is already on the website, I think.
Okay, we can pencil those in too. So that would be October. Wrong year now.
The 18th,
18. November
15th,
October what?
October
18th
18th.
of 2024.
Oh,
There you
okay.
go.
Acquiring money, what's next?
Yeah, I was saying, so last year it was October
And December would be what date?
20.
That's also close.
I think it was also just done so that there was a date in October for the agendas and things.
I'd say we just go to November 15th.
Yeah, on December.
Yeah. All right, so. Let's see, I'm just gonna recap the dates here. October 20th, November 17th, December 15th, January 19th, February 16th, March 15th, April 19th, May 17th, June 21st, July 19th, August 16th, September 7th, September 21st, October 18th, November 15th. And
So
we have
a question about the 2 September meetings. Do we like to have budget, the long budget hearing, first budget hearing, and then a long monthly meeting on the same day? Or a short budget hearing, hopefully, and monthly hearing? This one was approved that the meeting is after the first budget hearing. That could just as easily say after the second budget.
I think it makes more sense to have the regular monthly meeting with the second budget.
I agree.
We used to do it that way.
Yeah.
Okay.
So you're not mush when you leave the room.
Okay, may I have a motion, please, for the dates that I just described, adding that the 21st of September meeting in 2024 would have our second budget hearing and our regularly scheduled meeting.
So on this, what I'd say is that it is September 21st after, yes, after the second.
Correct. So we got a motion by
Can't
Commissioner
set the
Byrne.
second budget hearing.
You can't set the, sorry. Right. So we still put, we can still put September 21 and not at 10 a.m. and the budget hearing resolution and the agendas.
Correct. So we have a motion by Commissioner Byrne. Second by Commissioner Fry. Any further discussion or public comment? All in favor?
Aye.
Would
Okay,
somebody
moving
email me
on.
those dates?
I will.
Moving on to C, conduct code or civility code. I don't think this should be a time for us to discuss those items. I would ask one of the commissioners to take charge of this topic. I currently have a lot on my plate, so I will not, I don't think it's a good idea for me to take this on with everything else I'm working on with the lawsuits and running payroll and all the other stuff. So would anyone be willing to take it on?
Yeah, I would.
Okay, and I do think that's a good idea. So Van being an independent, you're not really part of the issue that we were discussing earlier. That would be helpful. So if you do need, Maggie did have some examples of those, so I can have her reach out to you and send you some of those to help you along. Very good. Moving on
Hey,
to,
Duncan,
yeah,
before you go on, so just so you know, I'll put the screen up, but I don't know if Ann needs to know, but there's already been approved, and it's a requirement of the state law for a fire district to have a fire code, district code of ethics. That is in place on the website, and I don't know if you intend to have a separate policy that's going to incorporate whatever you're gonna do into that already established one. But it's already been approved by the fire board a long time ago, so it's in place, but it's a requirement. It deals more with conflict of interest than other things, perhaps, but anyway.
I'll take a look at it and see.
Yep.
Come back.
Yep.
At the next meeting with a comment recommendation.
And I would suggest also, when you do have that code in place, then Maggie Mooney hopefully could have her 1 hour sunshine discussion in that meeting as well, because they kind of go hand in hand in some degree. So she's willing to do it for free for an hour, so maybe on the 20th or what of October. That should be, if that's enough time for you.
Yeah.
Okay, and I'll see if Maggie's available too. Okay. Moving on to reoccurring business, A. Martin and Dabrowski lawsuit. So we, as I mentioned previously, we were served with Brian Dabrowski's lawsuit, and the insurer, I took that document, extremely organized here. The insurer also sent the same letter saying that they'll cover our legal fees, but that's the extent of what they will cover, up to a certain amount. It's the same policy as before. I just wanted to disclose that. I also spoke to Maggie Mooney. So last week, the counsel representing us on the lawsuit for both of them recommended mediation on October 13th. I told them I was available, but I was not able to advise. We would not be able to have any type of settlement because that would need board approval. What Maggie's suggestion is to allow me to attend the mediation on October 13th and then have a shade meeting or an executive session. And she recommended 3 dates for which the law firm Cole, Scott, and Hussein and Maggie are available. That would be October 16th, October 17th, and October 18th. Those were 3 proposed dates that would work for them. So she does feel that would be important after the mediation to have that executive session to have. Well, not, so she said, take the mediation.
Purpose of mediation is to resolve the case. Can't resolve the case unless money is authorized to resolve the case. You have a demand.
Or if we have points that we want to make that dispute their claim altogether.
Yeah.
So,
Which I
So the way that the attorneys, I have the screenshots here, sorry, I'm gonna get it from the phone, but I'll read the memo from the law firm that's representing us in this case. It says, please allow this to serve as a brief update. Duncan Rosen has agreed to join us for mediation on October 13th. We will be sure to advise opposing counsel prior to mediation that any settlement reached will need board approval. We will let you know the results of the mediation upon completion of the same. If you have any questions, please let me know. And then Maggie said, Duncan, I spoke to Melanie today and she indicated she was available for a shade meeting on 10/16, 10/17, and 10/18. As we discussed, the recommendation would be for the shade meeting to occur after the 10/13 mediation in the Martin manner. And, she asked if those dates would work. We would have to notice a special meeting. So that's the way our attorney wants to handle it.
I would go back to her and ask her how come we can't meet with the attorneys before the mediation. On the 10th or something like that.
I did ask, and I'm not comfortable in a public meeting about strategy here, disclosing.
No, I just specifically on,
I would suggest that we follow
Follow
our
the attorney's
attorney's advice. There's nothing that's going to be decided on that date, we would have to come back as a board anyway. So basically, let's see what the offer is and then we can discuss it. That's what she wants to do.
So I recall from the last lawsuit, though, we had our aid meeting. We got briefed. It was closed to the public. It was just the commissioners. We got briefed by the attorney. They laid out.
Was that mediation or arbitration?
Mediation.
Yeah, mediation. We then, in that meeting, authorized then Chairman Burns up to a certain dollar figure to attend mediation and get the best settlement that we could on behalf of the district. Is that?
Yeah,
Okay.
and
The way it went.
it took place that day. It was done by Zoom. And we were at it for, I think, close to 6 hours. But we finally got it resolved well within the amount of money that had been authorized by the board. It actually got to the point where the plaintiff's attorney, Mr. Dennison, his attorney, actually turned it over to a junior associate because he realized he wasn't going to get anywhere near what he thought he was going to get. Because I made it clear that I thought his case was one of horse hockey, and they not saying they backed down, but they walked in a hell of a lot less than they thought they were gonna.
I would recommend just listening to our new attorney, Maggie Mooney. Represents several fire districts. I think that's what we should do at this time.
Okay, I would say, let's pick a date, 16, 17, or 18, it works for everybody, but then I would like to go back and quiz her a little bit on.
She did say that we would need a motion, to have me be the person who would attend that mediation on the 13th. If that's who the board chooses to do so, she seems to think, it makes sense, I think, as the chair. Now, let's talk about 16th, 17th, and 18th. I mean, are there any conflicts on any of those dates? And this would be something, I think, Jesse, that would not, right, am I correct, that Jesse would not sit on?
I think, if I remember right, there was attorneys, there was a court reporter, and there was no chief.
Commissioners.
Correct.
I shall abscond.
Just a question though, I mean, and I'm not trying to throw a wrench into things, but given that we've been through this once before and with his career as an attorney, wouldn't Bill Burns better represent us in this particular instance?
Well, I'm the one that has the rapport with Maggie Mooney, so I don't know, that kind of puts some complications.
Just want to throw it out.
I feel comfortable going there.
I move we designate Duncan as our representative. 13th of October.
Correct.
I would second
Okay.
But even in the last 2 days, whatever happened with the fire chief.
Right.
Yeah.
So I was planning on, writing up a memo to release, basically introducing Jesse, introducing Tom Tracy, and your command staff.
So the website's been updated, we're putting our bios on there.
I see.
So the website's been updated picture wise.
Yeah.
And the command staff, we will have bios on there as well, so you can direct them that if you like. Also, they can come by and see me anytime they want, which I'm gonna put that on there.
Teresa, if you can help us at the end of the meeting to notarize the document, that'd be great. Moving on to, I personally think we should table the rest of the items on the regular projects, as we just did that last week. Any objections?
We had 2 issues related to the treasurer's report we need to discuss.
Okay, we table everything except for the treasurer's report.
Yeah.
Okay. Go ahead, Bill, with the treasurer's report.
So the first issue is that I got the draft of the first 2 findings, management, they called management letter findings. There are two so far. And there may be others that have a phone call, a Zoom scheduled with the two auditors on the 11th of September. Time, I think at 3 p.m. Those are the two findings. The questions that have to be answered is the who, what, when, where, why, and of those two questions, there may be additional management findings after I get off the phone with them.
This is the audit.
Yes.
Okay.
And
The
is this the
tentative-
auditor's request to answer the who, what, when, where, why?
Yeah, the document that is page, like the page of the treasurer's report, is the complete wording that is in their draft document. And we have to provide a response that will go on page 35, signed by the chief.
So. Who's supposed to answer those questions? Previous
Well,
board?
No, you and I normally would.
Okay.
The tentative date for the auditor to present the finding, the entire audit is right now tentatively scheduled for the 20th of October meeting. By then. I've already responded to the state auditor's office on our failure to file by the end of June.
Okay, so
But
what
it-
do you need from us, Bill? I'm sorry.
If it's not me and Jesse, then who is it?
Okay, well, that's-
So you need a motion?
No need motion.
Okay, so you and I'll do it. Between now and the 11th, you and Jesse have to get together.
No, between the 11th of September and sometime shortly after, I'll tell them whether we have more findings or when they require this management letter. The management letter has to be provided to them somewhere between a week to 2 weeks before the 20th of October meeting date, or it gets tabled.
I'm okay with that.
The second topic is the line of credit documents. The board at I think it was the July meeting, authorized those documents be signed without a meeting being present. Those documents had not been signed or processed with the bank yet, because until Saturday, 2nd of September meeting, where we approved the special assessment, and the 5th of September, when the county told me they would process it 5 days late, we did not meet the revenue requirements of the line of credit. So they've been printed, Duncan signs, I have to sign, and yet there's 1 or 2 forms that we notarize. Teresa, he's signing the documents now, and I'll sign your notarization.
Do you want me to back it or?
No,
It comes out September.
Based on all day. Can't backdate them because Teresa's going to notarize them the next day,
Sure,
and we have to do them in her presence.
sure, understand.
It's the second one that's kind of is time sensitive, since we have a line of credit.
Pay it back within a year.
In this case, the period is still July. So.
Less than a year.
Yeah. That's all.
But it's like,
Oh, plan on doing one cheer on the second. It's almost
Something printed out, right?
Yeah.
the Sunday after.
Yeah.
I'll be here and do whoever wants to come.
That's a great idea.
I'm gonna put that on the.
Something's printed in the back.
You know, the homeowner clinics donate the full.
That's why I'm doing
Yes.
it.
So it's gonna be hangover food.
Back.
Okay. Well done.
It's gonna be bacon,
Oh, wait.
sausage. All right, so we'll have to set up, there you go.
Oh, no, it should be on the back. Sorry, these are the documents from the resolution that got authorized us to sign.
Well, Bill, sign, is that all you have after this gets signed up?
Yes. And we don't have to have a meeting.
Yeah, look, I think we just go ahead and adjourn.
You haven't called for public comment for the agenda items.
Is there any public comment on non-agenda items? As a reminder, our next meeting date is our second budget hearing on September 23rd at 10 a.m. And our next regularly scheduled meeting is on October 20th at 10 a.m. May I have a motion to adjourn, please?
So moved.
Second? Second. All right, any further discussion or public comment? All in favor to adjourn? Aye.
Aye.
Please go ahead and